for a parking problem.
And 4 and you're 23.
Yeah, that's 4, I'll get a 28 from one truck when you're ready.
Go ahead.
From one truck, white Lincoln X-ray 985, should come back about 10.
So you had 2000 Patrick Spalding.
10-4, if you can just put a little note in something like that, I'm going to be leaving a note on the vehicle if I can remove it.
What? What? Rockingham 505. 505, enter vandalism case for Athens. Explain it. Soon to be X. Slash her tires and has made threatening comments to her. She's concerned he might return.
And forgive this at 32.
10-4. You're assigned to a vandalism case in Athens. Did you copy the 505?
Yeah, 4. Look at that.
21.
No, 3 in Depot Street. Truck boy entering 5.
7435.
10-4.
10-4.
Can you go to 43 again?
143.
You go with that 43 you had. I didn't hear any, but I had just looks like we do.
10-4, I just wanted to know if you should be put back 76 to Cabana Circle or to the subject's address.
Yeah, I'll be 23 back on that town property case, and I'll be 76 to the Williams Road address to see if I can find the owner.
10-4. 449 1120.
And 449 1121, thank you.
10-4.
Code 4. 4.
All right, we're going to turn now to Dedham, Massachusetts, where we have some breaking news ahead of the murder retrial for defendant Karen Reed.
She stands accused of hitting her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, with her SUV and then leaving him to die in a snowstorm in 2022.
And joining us live now with that breaking news is Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Matt, great to see you as always. Now we hear the judge has officially ruled on that third-party defense, big part of this case. What can you tell us?
This is the ruling that we were waiting for. It's a massive ruling there out of Dedham, and it's a split ruling, one that impacts the entire retrial and the defense strategy. Judge Beverly Cannoni ruling that the third-party defense for Colin Albert is denied because the defense failed to show any evidence that Colin had any, quote, motive, intent, and opportunity to kill John O'Keefe. And there was no evidence ever presented at trial to show that he was at 34 Fairview at the same time John O'Keefe was at the home. But the defense can introduce evidence of third party with Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. Take a listen to these arguments about this earlier this month.
The defense in this case has more evidence of third-party culprits than the defense did in Finney. We're not asking this court to allow into evidence hearsay, as was admissible in Finney. We're solely seeking to introduce the crux of a third-party culprit defense, which is evidence of motive, opportunity, and means, all of which Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and Colin Albert had.
There is no motive. There is no motive. To suggest that one person was pining, although the text messages don't show that, they both stopped corresponding with each other days before. To suggest that Mr. Albert is friends with Mr. Higgins and therefore he is bootstrapped into a conspiracy to kill with no evidence. There is no opportunity to murder John O'Keefe when all the evidence points to him dying on the front lawn from an alleged collision.
Take a look at your screen. Here is the order. Judge Beverly Cannoni writing this, quote, the defendant is precluded from raising a third-party culprit defense alleging Colin Albert is culpable for John O'Keefe's death. Goes on to say, but not prohibited from raising a third-party culprit defense as to Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. Counsel cannot mention potential third-party culprits in opening statements, but will be given the opportunity to develop a theory through relevant evidence at the trial. As you know, this is on the eve of when this trial begins. Tomorrow morning begins jury selection.
Ooh. Wow. Thank you so much to Matt Johnson. Michael, I just have to mention, we were talking about why not Colin Albert.
Yeah.
I feel like a good big piece of that is the fact the judge found there was no evidence suggesting that Colin Albert was at the home where John O'Keefe was found. And that kind of makes sense to me now.
Yeah, there was no evidence of that. And I remember the connection they had made was that Colin allegedly has some kind of argument with the victim in the case. And they also, which I thought was a really powerful piece of evidence in the case, showed a picture with friends where his knuckles were scraped.
That's true.
Suggesting that might have happened the night that this victim had died. So she has the benefit of having heard that testimony already. So you have to remember that as well in making this decision. I think, especially to Colin Albert, it's pretty big.
Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely.
All right, let's bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us, criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer. Josh, great to see you as always. All from your travels. I've been following you on IG. Travels all around. I wish I was with you. But want to get your reaction to this judge's decision. A bit of a surprise for me. Honestly, you have to find some nexus between whoever you're going to allege. You can't just drag people through the mud for no reason. Here, it seems as though she found some evidence to suggest that there was motive, opportunity, and means for Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, but not Colin Albert.
It's great to be here, and thanks so much for welcoming me back. I couldn't be away for this one. This case, it just gets more interesting with each one of these rulings, because when you step back and look at this, y'all are right. This is a big hit for the defense, who had leaned very hard on the participation of Colin Albert, that knuckles photo, as that nexus that Michael was just talking about. The state took a dramatic move in trying to preclude a defense before trial because they knew it was coming. And that's really smart. It's really aggressive, but it also set them up for a little bit of failure, because now the defense can fully swing on the two other McAlberts involved. And there's still the opportunity for Colin to come back in if that door is.
Good morning, everybody. Wow, I didn't expect this guy to give the game away so much. Here's a guy who he just used the word McAlberts. McAlberts. What does that tell you? What channel that he's paying attention to? What kind of serious lawyer would refer to McAlberts? So, all right, guys, let the circus begin. And today it begins. Reports are that crowds are extremely thin outside the courthouse today. John DePetro is covering it in court, and he will be coming on with us when he can at some point to give us a report. Kate will be here. Kate will be here momentarily, and hopefully Jen Coffeneffer and Matt Doherty, maybe Drunken Turkeys. So, we don't know what's going to be covered in court today, so we'll be ready. There's nothing. I couldn't find anything scheduled on court TV to go live. So I don't know if there'll be anything going on where the cameras will come into court. This is the first day of jury empanelment. So not even sure how long we'll stay on, but we got a lot of motions to go over that came down and rulings that came down yesterday. So me and Kate will go over that. And it's important just to remember too, let's never lose sight that what's at stake here. There's a lot at stake. But let's start with the O'Keefe family. Let's start with justice for John. Those are hard chairs in that courtroom. And John's mom and John's dad, not to mention other people in the family, including your brother, have to sit in those chairs all day just in the hopes of getting justice here. The evidence is overwhelming, at least to some of one of the charges, two of the charges, really. And the only hope for the jury here, for the defendant here, is jury contamination. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to say because really Nick Rocco gave that away a month ago on court TV when he said they felt confident that there was no way there was going to be a unanimous verdict and that they believed that the state would not want to try this again. So that's their hope here. They're pinning their hopes on one or two jurors or one or two people coming out and on the jury going in with their minds made up. And, this has been an effective strategy for them. I talked to someone yesterday who in the area, in the Canton-Dedham area, who in the school system, she overheard somebody talking yesterday in the faculty lounge that she had been called to jury service. And so all the other teachers got excited and said, oh, you got to make sure you get on that jury so you can make sure that Karen is acquitted. This is what we're up against. Teachers in a school system didn't say you should make sure you go in. If you go on that jury, you should be impartial and let the evidence decide it. No, these are teachers that are saying you need to go on there, basically trick your way onto a jury and go in with your mind made up. It's just stunning. Look, sometimes this has been a theme of mine all along on covering this case. I never wanted to see. It was not, the law enforcement or the justice system. I never believed that it was up to them to stop this mob. It's up to the public. It's up to us. It's up to us citizens to start to understand what's going on here. That this is a form of hysteria, that people are rejecting evidence in favor of a narrative that sounds appealing to them for some reason. And it's up to the public to wake up. If nothing else, a starting point should be every citizen should recognize that to have a fair trial, you should want impartial jurors that come on to that without having their mind made up. But you have teachers that people that are in charge of educating our kids who don't seem to understand that. So what is going on? All right, so let me see if Kate is ready.
Good
Kate, you ready?
morning, Kevin. I am. I'm on my phone today, so I apologize in advance, but I'm
That's
ready.
okay.
I'm ready.
I decided to play this clip from Court TV. I hadn't heard it before, and it was, relatively short, but going over the rulings yesterday on third-party culprit. And here is this defense lawyer who I've never seen before, and he refers to the McAlberts.
It's such a ridiculous pejorative that they've come up with too. And yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of there's just a lot of bias surrounding coverage in this case, and it's really unfortunate, particularly as we go into the second trial. Because the focus should be the victim first and foremost, right? And the second should be a neutral recounting of the facts and a neutral recounting of what's going on, and that's not what we're getting most of the time.
Right. I mean, Carrie Lama had posted a great post on Twitter a couple of days ago. She said, and it was kind of telling, that all you hear from the people on our side is we want impartial jurors to weigh the evidence. But what you hear from the other side is we want jurors to go in that have made up their mind. And it's just consistent with what we hear. So I brought on the screen the ruling, and this was a really blistering ruling when it comes to Karen's defense, right? I mean, they not only knocked out Colin, but the language the judge used really. Let's see if I can find. Maybe it was on. I think it was on page 2. So she goes in initially to talk about the importance of third-party culprit defense for our justice system, and this is the thing: a judge is going to give a lot of leeway to allow third-party culprits. So I think, for instance, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, the only reason that no motive was established, the only reason they're allowed is because there's a lot of, it's a time-honored legal strategy to allow this third-party culprit thing. So they're going to give a lot of room for them to do that. And B, because at least Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were in the house. So at least
that's
they were
what
present.
It is, I think. Yeah. I think it's just because they were there, and she says as much, really. You know what I mean? That it's not strong, it's barely sufficient, but they were at least there. They at least saw John that night. They spoke to him, which is not true for Colin. Well, I mean, the implications of this ruling go beyond the trial, but we can get to that.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, let's definitely come back to that because that's intriguing. So just in the ruling here, as to Colin Albert, the defendant's proffer contains no additional evidence than that was what was presented at the first trial, and it is insufficient to support a preliminary finding that Colin Albert had the motive, intent, and opportunity to commit the crime. The evidence of opportunity is wholly inadequate. There is no evidence that Colin was at 34 Fairview when the defendant and Karen and Mr. O'Keefe ride home. Let's see. On that, evidence at the first trial was that Colin had already been picked up by the time John and Karen arrived. As to motive, the defendant contends that Colin Albert had been in a feud with John in the weeks and months leading up to John's death, and that Colin had thrown beer cans. Who's the witness that introduced that in the trial? The idea of the feud.
I don't even remember that coming in. I think they cross-examined Chris Albert on it. Is how that. I don't think it came in. I mean, that's the thing, is it didn't come in, right? Because she's saying there's no evidence. I think they tried to push that on Chris, and Chris was like, "No, my son Dylan cut through the yard," and he jokingly yelled at him, and Dylan got scared, and then he gave him candy to apologize.
So is the only evidence of that in the Gretchen Voss interview?
I mean, there's no. That's sort of a.
There's
no evidence of that.
I mean, I'm sorry. I should use the word claim. Is the only claim of that in the Gretchen Voss interview?
If I remember correctly, I mean, because Gretchen Voss wasn't in the last trial, that interview, but if I remember correctly, they attempted to introduce it through cross-examination on Chris Albert. It didn't work out because it's not true. They don't have anyone to corroborate it. It's a fabrication from Karen Reed's sick mind. That's all it is. There's nothing to substantiate it at all. They tried, they failed. I mean, not even one independent witness that can say this.
I'm just surprised the judge used this here. She must have been aware of she must have reviewed the Gretchen Voss transcript, or read the article. So let's see. There's no evidence substantiating these claims. Even if there was evidence of some ill will between John and Colin, motive alone is not enough to demonstrate third-party culpability. And let me pull up the next page. Oh, that's the same page. All right. They cite another case where the fact that there was a feud was not indicative of a motive to kill. Moreover, the theory that Colin is the third party culprit because he had scraped his knuckles at some point after John's death, had been seen in a video drunkenly taunting others, and apparently was not named in police reports, is speculative at best. Third party culprit theory that the victim was, all right, that was another case. Allowing such feeble third party culprit evidence poses a risk of unfair prejudice to the Commonwealth. So, not allowed. All right, so let's just read the first paragraph of the Brian Higgins and Brian Albert one. As to Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, the defendant's proffer is barely sufficient in the history of the first trial casts doubt on the seriousness of the claim. That is a blistering for a judge to say that. You know, I mean,
Well, she's the finder of fact. She's the neutral finder of fact. Here we are. And again, I think affording a lot of latitude to those two, introduce. And she says as much with the next sentence, but I mean, it's not there. Enough of the smoke and mirrors. It doesn't. These people didn't have a motive. They didn't barely had the means and barely had the opportunity. So I mean, I think that again, this is just to preserve our constitutional rights. But the judge is saying here, you can't really prove it, right?
Diane. So in this case, it was effective, Diane, Natalie, in the chat, because you put up the all caps, but please don't put all caps up, because then that just turns into a shouting war. But she's saying that that Dedham the courthouse is swarmed, let's see, with helicopters, etc. It's the feds coming in.
No, but I'll tell you, I kind of caught this morning. They're not messing around. Tom's CPU has already been threatened with arrest.
Oh, and Diana, I'm not laughing at you. I'm not at all implying that you're saying that. Just to be clear, I'm not teasing you. I said last night that Interpol and the Men in Black are coming in. It was my feeble attempt at an April Fool's joke. All right. So there were some other rulings yesterday. So what was the ruling on the ARCA testimony?
If we could just go back to that one, though, because I do want to touch on the implications of this, right?
Oh, yeah,
so,
please. Yeah, I forgot. I knew I'd forget.
At some point, it is beyond feasible, particularly after this second trial concludes, hopefully with a resolution one way or the other, right? That civil suits are going to start to come down, right? And now Colin Albert has a slam dunk civil suit against anyone who's ever said that he is a murderer, that he killed John O'Keefe, Colin did it, all that stuff. Absolutely slam dunk, because we have the neutral arbiter of fact here, the finder of fact, the judge, right on the onset saying there is nothing to support that this kid did anything wrong.
Right.
Okay. And even with Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, although she is giving some latitude and allowing that in potentially, because she didn't give them carte blanche. That's the other thing too, with the Bryans, we'll call them. They don't have carte blanche to just accuse them. They still have the same threshold that they had to meet last time. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that Hank Brennan is probably going to be a little bit more aggressive about holding their feet to the fire on that. Right.
Right.
So, I mean, this really strengthens the civil suits coming down. And I would say that in particular, Turtle Boy is absolutely screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I reviewed the case that Yannetti is talking about here, Finney, because Yannetti was the lawyer in that case. And so I had reviewed that for the book. And in that case, so Yannetti's client had been in prison for 10 years, and the murder he had been convicted of at the time he was convicted was 10 years before that. So the murderer was 20 years before. And what they found was there was the crime took place in Lowell in the Three Decker area. And so a densely crowded neighborhood. And they found a guy who had a history of shoving his wife against a wall and resulting in her getting a concussion. So, and they said that he kept I forget if it was a baseball bat or a stick or a club. I think he kept a club in his car for self-defense. Well, he lived in Lowell. I grew up in Lawrence. I mean, everybody has one. So that was the basis. Part of the basis of getting a new trial was saying that the original counsel for this guy, Finney, should have brought up third-party culprit, and they should have brought up that particular person, even though there's no indication that that person had any connection or any animus against, the woman who was killed. So, I mean, it was pretty weak. But he managed to get a new trial for her and eventually get his client off. So, the other aspect of getting him, that was the main part of getting him off. And the other aspect of getting Finney off was the fact that he was special needs and he confessed. So his conviction was based largely on the confession. But that confession came allegedly after hours of interrogation. And I do know for a fact, because this is something that I've been interested in research, that people do make false confessions after hours, hour after hour of interrogation. That is a real thing. That's a real phenomena. But there's other evidence against him. And then Finney, during this attempt to get a new trial, on the stand but in testimony that could not be used against him later in the trial, he described exactly what he had described before, saying that he killed this young woman when he went into her bedroom, and she woke up. He wasn't planning to kill her, but when he was planning to do something of a sexual nature, when she woke up and resisted, he killed her. So, Jen is actually here. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jen. I saw that you did a show last night as I was going to bed, so I watched part of it. You did a great job. And I also watched Matt had a new video out, and Kate has a new video out too. So, wow, there's so much excellent work out there to look at on this case now.
Yeah, I love Kate's videos. They are so professionally done. She needs to be working for some professional movie making outfit.
Oh, thank you.
They're really good. I wish I had such
I'll have to write a movie for her. I'm not an editor, but I can write stuff. So
there you go. You guys can collaborate.
So have you followed? So, actually, good thing to talk to you about, Jen, because I don't think you were on the last episode. But so this FBI expert, Eastler, I forget his name.
Easter.
He's been ruled out here. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually touched on it yesterday, but I have pretty strong thoughts about this. First of all, this is not unusual. It happens all the time that judges don't let FBI experts come in to sort of Monday morning quarterback investigations. There's a big difference between coming in and providing a professional expert opinion on a particular set of circumstances, but not to just demolish how an investigation was done from top to bottom. Also, he's an FBI agent. He was taught at Quantico and had all his training through federal lens and through our guidelines and our expectations. Never trained with Canton PD or the state police. So it would be very unfair for him to be allowed to go in, and it could be quite prejudicial for them to put that standard on officers that don't have that training at all, and really to make such a huge deal out of, again, I've said it before, leaf blowers and solo cups. Let the jury decide if that really affects the facts that significantly.
Kate, I found it interesting, the basis for the judge's ruling. So this is like kind of law school for me, going through all this stuff. And I wouldn't have thought of that until I read the ruling. Then I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. So can you explain that to people?
What do you mean the basis for the basis
I did
for
not for not allowing Eastler, or Easter, whatever it is.
Well, as far as like what she cited for authority, I'd have to pull it up.
Yeah, I think it was basically. I think the idea was that the jury can decide for itself whether or not. So he was going to be brought in just to say this investigation was sloppy, and once you open the door to that, then every single defendant that has means is always going to find somebody willing to take that payday to come in and say, "Oh yeah, we would have used those party cups or this and that." I
Or,
mean,
you could find somebody to do it for free if it's high profile enough. Let's just be real. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, I
right.
think that it's just common sense that, like, no, you can't. First of all, completely different agency, the FBI versus state police. So they're going to have different standards. They're going to have different protocols, procedures. Michael Easter, as I understand it, is a cell phone tower expert. So I don't even know
Yeah.
definitively that he's ever worked a murder in his life. And I'm not disparaging the guy. I'm simply saying that, if I have a problem with my foot, I probably want to confer with a podiatrist and not a cardiologist, even though they're both doctors, And I mean, it's just Monday morning quarterbacking. And it's literally just coming up to give your personal opinion on somebody else's investigation, which inherently is going to be biased, right? Opinions always are. So like I think it's just common sense.
Good morning and welcome, Matt. Thanks for being here. So we're all together broadcasting from all of our channels. And so depending on what channel you're on, you may not know all of them. But Jen's channel is Breaking the Case with Jen Coffeneffer, and she has an excellent new video up there from last night. Matt's got a great video up there from Boundless Millennial is the name of his channel. And Kate's got a new one too from Masshole Mafia. So great job as always, entertaining. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
What do you have any thoughts on any of the rulings that came down yesterday? I know you did already, but you can share with us.
I mean, I think it was a joke, like, because they're trying to use the Bowden defense and bring in like an expert. Like they couldn't find a case law in Massachusetts to support it, so I just think obviously she ruled in favor of ruling him out. What was the other one? They're trying to get Garrett Wing in again. Like I saw another motion for that, but I didn't even think she ruled on it in the first one. But so maybe I missed it, or they're just like doubling down. But Garrett Wing was the one that Melanie Little had on her show. And he's clear as day calling out. And I think maybe not my last video, the video before, I had a compilation of that. So I might just put it out separately so it stands alone, because I would think it was at the beginning of a live. But basically he's calling out lacerations. Like he's saying you have to have a laceration on the top and the bottom. But then he's saying John O'Keefe's arm looks just like that, but it doesn't have any laceration. So it's like, that's the guy they're going to bring in. So
my favorite part of that is, if you listen to him on Melanie Little, right? Melanie Little prefaces him. So like when she introduces him, she's like, just to be clear, this is not the kind of expert that can testify about dog bites. And then, they went ahead. And I think also when I was reading the opposition to Garrett Wing, it's a little bit confusing because they're saying that they want to essentially call him as a sub-rebuttal witness. So like they have Dr. Marie Russell presumably in their case in chief. And then Jim Crosby would be called by the Commonwealth as a rebuttal witness. And then they want Garrett Wing to rebut Jim Crosby. And it's like, that doesn't happen here. You don't get to rebut a rebuttal. Like what?
I can't even believe they're calling the doctor again. Sorry.
No, I just want to say, anybody watching in chat, I don't see anything going on in court right now. So if anything comes on, please just let us know right away. So I'll bring it to you. I have on the Law and Crime Network and Court TV. And so there must be no cameras or no action going on in court right now. But so somebody give me a heads up and I'll go to it right away if anybody sees that. So thank you.
I heard that like 30 jurors showed up in pink shirts.
Are you kidding me?
30 jurors?
I was like, Jesus Christ.
I wouldn't be surprised though. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. That's really the factor here. Like, that's the thing that, like, and it's bothersome to me. It would be bothersome to me if they were showing up in blue shirts too, though. It's like, you want impartial jurors, right? And like, they've just done so much work to taint the jury pool that I am concerned that there are going to be people lying their way on there with their minds made up, thinking that they're doing something, to a higher calling, whether it be going in wanting to, convict her or acquit her. Like, that should not happen. And I'm worried that, like, how polarizing this case has become, that's what's going to happen here. And that would be really, really bad.
I think what makes this case stand out from several other high profile cases is not only do you have everything on social media and mainstream media, but you have the groundswell that everybody can drive by and see in Norfolk County. All those signs, all those bumper stickers, all those people in pink, the pom-poms, everything going on that you can physically see right there in your county. That's the big difference. People on megaphones. It's so different than most trials.
So Channel 5 is publishing, I've gone over this in the channel. I want to see if there's any changes to it. The final version of the jury questionnaire. I don't even know if I'll be able to make this big enough to see for myself, let alone everybody else. Yeah, I can't read this. Yeah, sorry. This is not a form I can read. It's too small. This is on Channel 5.
Kevin, I posted those in bigger font this morning. Again, just
okay.
as a refresher. I know they've been posted before, but what I find very interesting, first of all, it's not typical to have that many questions. Be honest with you, I think were 30. The other thing that was very atypical to me, even in a trial concerning a police officer that's dead, is there seems to be a whole undertone of, do you believe in police corruption? And another undertone of, how against being an alcoholic are you?
Right.
That is very unusual for these types of instructions. So I found it very interesting that they are kind of trying to weed that out.
There must be a kind of way where you're trying to give both sides the ability to shape the questionnaire a little bit to get some balance. So some of those, so obviously the defense wants to know, trying to find out if you have cops in the family, if you're sympathetic to cops, and the prosecution is trying to find out if you've been influenced by social media and by the media and stuff like that. So
I think it's funny because I'm I'm not anti-cop, but I am very critical of the police, and so, and I think a few people that I've seen on talking about this case and it's just but the facts are here. You can be critical of the police, but you still have to accept the facts of a case and not just jump to one side.
Yeah, this is what I've been saying all along is people. So the alt juror, the decisive thing for her was when she, or at least what she says, was that when Michael Proctor, when they went over those texts, she's like, well, that's it. This guy's biased, so the whole investigation is bullshit. But like I've said, if you want to drop all of the evidence, there's no evidence that Michael Proctor in any way planted evidence, falsified evidence, manufactured anything. The only evidence is that he didn't like Karen, and now we're seeing that millions of people who watched that documentary don't like Karen. That's not to excuse his statements, but if you want to throw away all of the evidence that was gathered by Proctor, go ahead. The main evidence was not gathered by Proctor, so you want to throw that stuff out. You're still going to have the debris field that was found with taillight pieces that were found by the CERT team. Proctor had nothing to do with that, could not have had anything to do with that. He didn't even go to the crime scene that day. The vehicle data, John's phone data that shows he never went in the house, all that stuff, none of that has any connection to Michael Proctor.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, not to disparage case agents and lead detectives, because they obviously are important, but at these stages, the early stages, what you're doing is you're just the individual really collecting what everybody's collected.
Yeah.
That's what you are. You're the dissemination point where people are calling in. Okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. This is what's going on here. And you're directing different things to occur. And so he's really a dissemination point as opposed to being firsthand evidence on anything, except for when he went back and found other pieces of taillight and somebody was with him. So there's really nothing he can personally testify to at all in terms of direct evidence.
So what is, I didn't realize, so Turtle Boy apparently is going to be sitting with the media watching the jury impanelment. I didn't realize that was a public process, and I'm
Yeah, they hadn't
kind of this should be allowed in. Well,
they had media in last time too.
They did last time. Yeah, they must have. But I didn't realize it, and I don't like it. I think there should be a lot of privacy in that process, because you're going to have someone's going to stand up there and say, my mom is sick, or I have kids at home, or this and that. That should be private. There shouldn't be jurors. There shouldn't be media up there watching that, in my opinion.
I mean, even if they do, the fact that they still consider Turtle Boy a journalist disgusts me. Like, he is not a journalist. Like, we see clearly that he was conspiring with her from the beginning. He never pushed any side from the truth. Like, those people are so misinformed, and we don't see it as much on YouTube because people watch us, but like on TikTok, like I interact with all kinds of people that they literally know nothing. And it's because Turtle Boy's a journalist, and they've only listened to him, and he does not tell them any of the facts. Everything is twisted. So he's not a journalist. Like, he should not be allowed in there.
Yeah, and this, of course, there's no way to determine, I guess, who is a journalist and who isn't. That would be a difficult thing to do. But here you have a guy that is clearly has a long history in this case and in other cases of threatening jurors, basically threatening to expose them, threatening to harass them if they don't vote his way. So Turtle Boy should not be allowed near any jury ever, based on those statements.
I think it would be pretty easy for Judge Bev to be like, did any of these journalists threaten any of the witnesses' 17-year-old sons? Did any of these journalists stand outside of these witnesses' houses with a megaphone? Like, it's very easy for her to determine that he's not a journalist. She just doesn't want to do it.
Right.
So now he's fighting the sequestration. Right now, I saw that motion come in and essentially saying, look, you can't get me out of there because I'm the media. You're going to financially harm me, which I thought was an interesting argument to make. Mr. Higher Purpose here apparently is worried about getting hit in the wallet if he can't obsessively spread misinformation about this case. And also, his attorneys have indicated that he intends to invoke his Fifth Amendment right. Okay, and which is probably smart, but people that don't have any concern about, having done anything wrong usually don't plead the Fifth. So that's food for thought right there.
That's bad for Karen if he does that. I hope he does.
I told at the start of the show, so I talked to someone last night who works in the school system in that area, and so someone informed at the faculty lounge said, that she's been called to jury duty, and, so she may end up on this case. And when she said this, all the other teachers were like, oh, you have to make sure you get on that jury to make sure Karen gets off. I just, it's not surprising, but it's just stunning. These are the people that are teachers. They don't even have a sense that you should get an impartial jury. And if the evidence is really on your side, don't you want an impartial jury? I don't know. It's just disturbing.
Well, the law tubers are pushing out that Judge Bev is corrupt, and this is proof because what did she do? Oh, because of the Colin Albert thing. They're really upset about that, which I think is the easiest ruling. I mean, I think they all should be not allowed to be third-party culprits because there's literally no evidence. There was a Fed investigation, and we saw the first trial. They had nothing. They had social media rumors. That's it.
Right.
It's a joke.
The defense still can call on Colin, and so I don't know if they will, and still try to develop some kind of an angle there. They just can't. They can't bring it up in the opening, but also
it's precluded. But it's completely denied. He's done. They can't bring him in at all. The only people that they can develop are Brian Higgins and Brian Albert.
Well,
yes. Thankfully, Colin's out.
I talked to Chris Albert last night, and Chris was told by the witness advocate that he can be called.
Called as a witness, but not called, not blamed.
Right.
Well, he can be called as a witness, and then they can try to develop it.
Okay.
I don't know but there'll be more limitations on the questions by the judge now. So they're not going to let them bring in the video of him in high school, with his buddies, making threats to other people and stuff like that. So there are going to be more limits, but he still can be called by the defense to try to develop an angle there.
I don't think they can develop an angle against him, though, is the difference, Kevin. They could have him come in to testify about something at the party or something like that to try to get him to say that he saw John there. But she made it crystal clear they can't do anything to point the finger at Colin anymore. That's why I think this is such a landslide victory, because it goes to the point that they are making up these allegations against all three. And in fact, the judge even said there's barely enough for me to even consider either of the Bryans to not be completely excluded.
Right. Well, I mean, let's hope they don't. And obviously, it's unfair to try to ruin these kids' lives when they haven't done anything wrong. And also, this is good news for Allie. If you don't call Colin, there's absolutely no reason to call Allie McCabe up. So she can go on with her college life and hopefully ignoring all the shit that's going on in this case.
Yeah, I agree. Although I liked how she got in all the harassment, because they can't directly bring it up, but they keep opening the door. So we'll see if Jen gets it in.
I mean, I think it's very easy for the witnesses to get it in because you ask them any question, like, because Jackson's trying to say, like, oh, were you watching the trial? Do you think about this case? Do you talk about this case? The easy answer is like, yes, because I've been getting harassed. Like, that is their answer. Like, a normal witness would not be thinking that much about the case, but something on social media every day, like, it's just so easy to get it in. And so, like, the witnesses just have to, and I'm sure Hank Brennan has covered it with the witnesses.
I was going to bring up something, and I wanted to get your all's feedback. When Judge Cannoni said that these individuals that they're looking at, the first 100, they've had notices for weeks. That's what she said. And we know these juror questions have been out in the public for weeks. And my point is, and I actually said this morning, is that they could be practicing what to say and go over what to say. I think Turtle Boy could have some idea of who's been noticed, because I bet you people will have contacted Turtle Boy that are FKRs and say, listen, I got this notice, or my cousin got the notice, or my father got the notice. And what do we need to answer? I have no doubt that something like that could be going on. Zero doubt.
Yep.
100%.
And there's different aspects to it. There's one way to influence the jurors is the fact that they might be intimidated. They might be afraid of what the mob will do them. But the other side is this huge draw to want to get into the limelight, as we see with Ronnie. It's a powerful appeal to everybody, but to a certain percentage of people that, wow, I get to be a part of this big momentous case, and to become a hero to that crowd. All those things, this teacher I was talking about, she's going to be in there thinking, if she gets on that jury, that I don't want to go back to work and either face the wrath of the other teachers that believe Karen's innocent, or I want to be able to tell them I was a hero. Those are two different things, but they're both factors broken. There.
We're all working.
What was that? I don't know where that came from. The mysterious ghostly voice.
Yeah, that was odd.
That's my fault. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's cool. You liven things up a little. That was. So it looks
someone's
like nothing
asking
is going.
Go
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, someone's asking in the chat, does Matt think that Karen served her time and she should get out like the Menendez brothers? Let me just say this: if Karen was in jail for 30 years and I thought she was reformed, then I would think she should get out too. Yes. Yeah. But as of now, she is relishing in the murder that she committed, and she loves it.
Loves it. I mean, that's the most jarring thing that I think came out of the documentary, is just how much she's enjoying this and profiting from it, It's eerie. It's eerie to watch her affect with all this. I mean, the fact that she, it's an ego bath walking into court. I've never felt that way walking into court before. Like, I mean, you're walking to sit down for your murder trial. That's not a positive, but for her it is. It's just bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to interrupt.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. We'll go right back to Jen. I just want to interrupt with a brief sports bulletin. The Red Sox signed pitcher Garrett Crochet, who they just acquired from a trade during the offseason. So he's their number one starter, to a 6-year, $170 million contract extension. You guys probably don't care about that, but there might be someone in our audience that's a sports fan. So that's pretty good news. And thank you very much, Courtney Myers, for the super sticker. Thank you. So sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, I was just going to comment about what's going on concerning the jurors right now, too, with this buffer zone. This buffer zone needed to be a mile. It did not need to be, I think it's only 200 feet. I mean, that 200 feet, just think of 100 yards is a football field. 200 feet is nothing. And I know that they've posted the pictures, the diagram, so everybody can see. It's a travesty that they're still going to be able to set up and make a show.
It is a little more expanded though, because the buffer zone includes it's 200 feet from some of these courtyards and side streets around there, right, Kate? I think it's expanded.
And their crowds are so thin. I suspect it's because they can't pay protesters anymore. But yeah. But it doesn't look like there's a lot of people there. This thing is dead, let it die. I hope that they, stick to their guns and arrest people that try to, encroach into the buffer zone and let it die.
Dixie Doodle says there's 92 jurors today, and I think they have another batch coming in this afternoon. So I think they have 200 coming in scheduled for today. So typically in a juror batch, you have 100. But obviously a certain percentage of those won't show. So I think we may end up with multiple jurors today, hopefully.
I don't know, from my view, if the jury selection, and I know there's nothing that can be done, but the jury selection needed to be done out of Boston, where even if people have heard about it, so many don't care. They have their lives, they work in construction, they've got big jobs. I think I've shared several times that I travel all the time, and every time I hear somebody's from Massachusetts or Boston, I ask them, and none of them have ever even heard of Karen Read. So people who with really busy lives that aren't newsies or true crimers, but Norfolk County, there's no way no one is going to not know about this case.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I got a message. So it was sent to me Sunday at 5. But I didn't get it till yesterday morning at about 8:30, and I replied right away. It was from Billy Bush, something like that, and invited me on the show. But so I replied, yeah, sure, but they said, no, sorry, we already booked it, and I find out it was Turtle Boy and Nick Rocco that went on last night, that show. And it was, I guess, it's got a big audience. So
I'm sure it was riveting.
Yeah. I guess this Billy Bush is like really, really strong. He's basically Howie Carr. He's pro Karen on this or pro grifting or whatever. So that would have been an interesting battle to go on with those guys. It's always interesting if you have a host that is going to interrupt you and try to get you with gotcha questions and stuff like that. But did you guys have any more thought? So what was the ARCA ruling yesterday, Kate?
Was there a ruling?
There was a ruling. Remember you talked about you on the phone.
The bias, right. That was just denied on the docket. Yeah. Not shocking. Again, if you allow in that they were hired by the FBI, that's going to open the door to everything else. And honestly, that's not good for Karen, right? Because then, right. I mean, what's the inference that you make if the federal government came in, investigated, and Karen Read's still on trial?
Yeah, but it's hard to get the jury to know all that. What witness is going to tell the jury that the federal investigation is over?
I mean, she's still on trial.
Yeah, so that would be, I don't know, that would be the challenge. So I think the judge is going to go the same as last year, where maybe she partly already did yesterday to say that no mention of the federal investigation, but I still think after the voir dire, she may have a further restriction where she tells the defense, you can't mention that an independent agency hired the ARCA guys. I don't know.
It's not even true anymore, right? They hired ARCA. They paid ARCA. They hired them. I mean, so
well, I should say originally hired.
Right.
That
feel
was
like
crystal clear in the first trial. It was crystal clear that the feds weren't coming to save the day. If they had any inkling that somebody other than Karen Reed had done this, that trial would not have happened. They would have interceded. It's just like what they did in the Sandra Birchmore case. This would not be going to trial. And that is the thing that's so perplexing to me, that people can't wrap their head around that.
well, it's because Turtle Boy is saying it's not really over. Don't listen to anybody except for him. He's telling the truth. He's the only teller of truth, even though he's got caught in lies for 2
The
years
only
straight.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, so I lied to my audience again. Was it a big lie? No big deal, right? People lie. It's not illegal to lie, right?
It's always interesting, too, when someone says, don't listen to the other people. I forbid you to listen to the other people. I forbid it. Don't talk to them. I can't even imagine ever saying that. I don't say, like, don't listen to Turtle Boy. Go ahead, listen to Turtle Boy if you want. Just listen to information from all sides and weigh it rationally. But when someone is doing that, it suggests they're afraid. Don't talk to Plevin. Don't talk to Kate. It's
Well, and all the character indictments that come along with it to try to discredit. It kind of reminds me. So I prior to the Karen Reed case, I had this long-standing, drama feud or whatever with this guy named Chili DeCastro, who, for all intents and purposes, is sort of like a sovereign citizen, right? And Chili DeCastro and Turtle Boy actually teamed up together, and so this is the kind of the beginning of the lawfare. And Turtle Boy would use Chili as a proxy, and he would send him to court and say, "Oh, you should go get a restraining order on her." And so one time we're sitting there for a restraining order hearing, and it's not going well for Chili at all. And Chili turns to the judge and he says, "But Your Honor, she's a bad person and I'm a good person," right? And that's sort of like Turtle Boy's main argument with all of this, right? Like, if you don't buy into this conspiracy, if you stand for the victim, if you don't align with what he wants, then it's just simply like, look, they're bad people and we're good people. Don't talk to those bad people. It's just such a weak argument. It doesn't address any of the facts. It doesn't address any sort of intellectual vantage point that you have. It's just appealing to his impressions of the character of people that oppose him. And in his mind, if you oppose him, you are de facto bad. So, I mean, that right there kind of, I think, speaks to how weak their argument is as far as Karen Reed's evidence, I mean, not evidence, sorry, innocence goes, right? Is that, like, there's, don't listen to it. It's not real. They're all bad people.
You know what? I'm shocked that the public is not concerned about there in Massachusetts. They should be worried about being a mere bystander, being a mere witness, and going through what these witnesses are going through. That's what they should be worried about.
Right.
absolutely.
And murderers should be moving there right away because, I mean, you can become a celebrity and just blame everybody else for your crimes.
Oh, NECN is saying watch Karen Reed's second murder trial at 9:30. So there'll be some kind of coverage at 9:30. So we'll bring that to you guys. We're not going to stay on all day, obviously. We wanted to introduce ourselves to people and so that they understand that we'll be covering the trial completely and everything important that happens in it. The jury selection process, we don't know how long it's going to take. Last year, it took less time than anticipated, but this year it's much more exposed to the public, so it may take longer. But we don't really know how long it's. Kate, do you have any idea how long it might take this time?
I would say several weeks. I would say that you're probably not seeing the.
Wow.
Yeah. I would say that we're probably not seeing the trial starting until mid to late April, possibly May. It's going to take a long time.
The trial for Karen Reed is about to get underway in less than 2.
So are they looking for jurors that they're not looking for jurors that know nothing about this case. They're looking for jurors that basically haven't made up their mind and haven't followed it closely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So is it that hard to find jurors like that?
Well, we see it on here on social media. I mean, this is a polarizing case, and I think many people have already made up their minds one way or the other.
I can tell you 20 years ago when I owned the bar, I followed the news, but I mostly followed like national news. And I don't think I would have, if this was going on then, I barely would have heard of this case if at all. I would have been a good juror back then. I wouldn't have wanted to do it, but I would have been a good juror because I truly wasn't following local media, definitely not true crime media back then. So there's got to be a lot of people out there like that.
I just think it's going to be hard once it starts because then there's coverage everywhere you go and you're going to be hearing these things like, wow, if you've never heard
Right.
it. And it's so easy to like go into like who's going to be the number one person that comes up if you search anything.
Right.
Like, you know, and like what do the chats look like? And like it's very influential. And like that's what Turtle Boy from the beginning, he's like ratio them, and ratio them it means like make sure that they have more comments against them than likes. And like that's what his like mob of idiots does to anyone that speaks the truth. And it's going to be very hard for jurors to, even if they come in unbiased, to stay unbiased.
What does it take for a juror to go up and raise their hand in front of a judge and lie? I mean, and you're not doing it for yourself or to protect a family member. Like I could see Mr. or Mr. Reed lying for their daughter. I mean, I'm not justifying that, but you can understand it, right? You love your daughter. But what is for someone to get up there and lie their way onto a jury and lie every day when they get up in the beginning and raise their hand and say they haven't followed the case in the media or discussed it, you know, to be able to do that for someone they don't know. I don't think most normal people would do that.
They think they know her. She's created this bizarro parasocial relationship with these smooth brain cretins. They think they're on a mission from God, you know? Like, they really do think that in exonerating Karen Reed, they're somehow bettering society. And obviously, that's not reality. But I think that's what I mean. What's her Victoria George, the newest esteemed member of her defense team? That woman cried over being an alternate and wore pink the next day. You should have never been on that jury. You know, like, I mean,
right.
Who cries over not having to be on jury duty anymore? Nobody.
Right. And what about what she did, that snaky thing where she obviously went to the defense, I would say. And so what we know, before I accuse her or something, let's just say what we know. We know that the Vanity Fair article came out on the hours after they made the announcement. So that obviously was delayed on purpose. So she goes forward, does an interview with the same Vanity Fair writer that's beyond extremely pro Karen, right? Doesn't even attempt to debunk any of it. And they have some kind of an arrangement where Vanity Fair is going to sit on that article. At the same time, and based on what that article said that a few weeks earlier, she goes to Christina Rex and gives her a statement that is supposed to be from her as a juror. She presents herself as a juror, but clearly she already had a deal in place to join the defense when she made that statement to Christina Rex. Is Alan Jackson orchestrating all that? I think pretty obviously, but it's just this, you know, it's just the whole thing is a dishonest presentation of who she is. She's getting compensated at some level by the defense, and yet she's presenting herself, making a statement to the public like that as though she's just a conscientious juror. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's the defense, it's Turtle Boy, it's all one unit, and I think he's bringing in the people, he's getting out the message, and because they all came forward with affidavits like right after too, I think that they...
Well, at 6:30, the second trial
Definitely.
for Karen Reed is about to get...
Good. Sorry. Every time I refresh it, I have to... Go ahead. No, I just... sorry about the volume interruption. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
They all like... I mean, how else would she get in contact with them so fast? Why would she know what to do? How would she know to get to Vanity Fair? It's obvious that it's Karen Reed's defense team orchestrating the whole thing. It's Alan Jackson's probably the head of the snake, and you know, Turtle Boy and Karen are like his two henchmen. Yanetti's just the dumbass that like went along with it and ruined his reputation. But now he's in it and he can't get out. And I think that's like the makeup of the group. And everybody else is just a useful idiot.
Don't discount my boy Yannetti Spaghetti here, though, because we've seen in the filings a little taste of his communications with Turtle Boy, and he is fully in it. I mean, that's kind of what I detailed in my latest video, is when you go back and you trace the time frames from these select communications that ended up referenced in that filing, the stuff that he's encouraging Turtle Boy to do, is freaking heinous. Like, oh, that was an awesome live stream. What did he do during the live stream? He used discovery materials leaked to him by the defense team to call every single witness that he could against Karen Reed. So I don't know that Yannetti is necessarily just like a useful idiot that's just like, oh man, guess we're intimidating witnesses now, can't get out of it. Like, he seems to be a willing participant.
So, Kate, are you going to be texting Hank Brennan during the trial?
So
I'm kidding.
yeah,
I'm kidding.
yes, I'm going to be. I mean, I actually have a direct line to Michael Morrissey, apparently. So, I mean, yeah, I will be. We're in a group chat. We're in a group chat, all of us. And all we talk about is how we can, coordinate to set up Karen Reed and Turtle Boy. Actually, we're planning on making sure that they have speeding tickets when they leave court today.
Oh, good. And I have the earpiece to Bev, so I can tell her what to rule on.
Perfect.
What
So
do you guys think? Actually, that's a good. What do you guys think of Bev's performance? I know, Matt, you've had some criticism for it. What do you guys think of Bev's performance in the case?
I mean, I think she's trying to be fair. I think that's what it is. I think she's trying too hard, kind of, for public perception. That's my opinion, is that she is trying to be fair. She is trying to follow the law. But there's just a lot of weird things in this case that, like calling him a journalist, there's just certain things that I think have crossed the line.
They have to do that, though. I mean, they have to do that because the way that the free press works is that the government doesn't. Yeah, they don't get to determine.
Karen Reed is about to get underway in less than.
Sorry about that. Good.
That's okay. They don't get to determine who's press and who's not. So, and I think that's that lonely pamphleteer quote that Cosgrove had brought up in his opposition to the journalistic privilege, and it cuts both ways, right? Because we have a free press that the government can't really interfere with and classify. Journalists aren't provided, more rights or more leniency than your average citizen because average citizens are the press and the press are average citizens. It doesn't really matter. So I don't really hold that against Bev. I think Bev, Judge Canone, I hate what I hate. I hate when I slip into that. I don't know that woman, but it's it's proper. It's the way that works. I've seen it a lot. I can speak with authority on it because previous to this I covered a lot of First Amendment auditors and cop block and all that stuff, and they were all the press, and you would watch the way that they would behave and the content they would produce and go, oh my God, how is this journalism? And I think that's the distinction really, is that we colloquially sort of apply standards to journalism that might be a little bit antiquated, unfortunately, because especially with the internet, we're all journalists now. I've been called a journalist before. I don't know how I feel about that, but I don't think that that's improper. I think it's what she has to do. I think that it's unfortunate that he's been allowed in the courtroom. I'm curious to see what she does with the sequestration order with him,
Right.
I tell you, the journalists that I work with, and I make it very clear, I am no journalist and I am no reporter. I haven't gone to school for that. Their ethics classes and everything else, what they have to do for the media corporations that they represent. I'm not that, and neither is he. So there's sort of this bastardized version of what is considered a journalist, and he is a bastardized version of that.
Versus Karen Reed.
Counsel.
You want counsel? You want me to say?
Counsel.
Can I have counsel identify themselves for the record, starting with the Commonwealth?
Good morning, Your Honor. Laura McLaughlin for the Commonwealth.
Good morning, Ms. McLaughlin.
I'm Lally for the Commonwealth. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Lally.
Good morning, Your Honor. Hank Brennan for the Commonwealth.
Good morning, Mr. Brennan.
Good morning, Your Honor. Alan Jackson on behalf of Karen Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Good morning, Your Honor. Elizabeth Little, also on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Ms. Little.
Morning, Your Honor. Robert Alessi on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Morning, Mr. Alessi.
Good morning, Your Honor. David Yannetti for Karen Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Yannetti.
Good morning, Your Honor. Victoria George on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Ms. George. Good morning, Ms. Reed.
Okay, Karen Reed, can you please stand? Karen Reed, you are now set at the bar to be tried, and these good men and women who I shall call to pass between the Commonwealth and you upon your trial. If you'd object to any of them, you must do so before they are sworn. You have a right to challenge any 16 jurors without giving reason. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, jurors. My name is Beverly Cannoni. I'm a judge of this court, and I want to welcome you here today and give you some idea on what you will be asked to do. So, jury service, as you know, is one of the most important duties we have as citizens. We appreciate that you're here, ready, willing, and able to serve if you're called upon to do so, and our system of justice simply does not work without you, so we thank you. This is the case of Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. The Commonwealth alleges that at approximately 6 a.m. on the morning of January 29, 2022, the Canton Police Department received a 911 call reporting an unresponsive male party in the snow outside a residence at 34 Fairview Road in that town. Officers responded and discovered the man, later identified as John O'Keefe, off the roadway in the front lawn area. Officers identified 3 women with Mr. O'Keefe, one of whom was the defendant, Karen Reed, the girlfriend of Mr. O'Keefe. The defendant had been with Mr. O'Keefe the previous evening at 2 different bars in Canton and had driven with him to this residence in the early morning hours of this date. Mr. O'Keefe was treated by paramedics from the Canton Fire Department and transported to the Good Samaritan Medical Center, where he was subsequently pronounced deceased. The Commonwealth alleges that the defendant struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle earlier that morning and then left the scene while Mr. O'Keefe lay injured in the snow during a blizzard. The defendant denies these allegations. She is presumed to be innocent and has pled not guilty. So Ms. Reed is charged with second-degree murder. She is also charged with manslaughter while operating under the influence and with leaving the scene after causing personal injury or death. I will describe these indictments in detail at the end of the case when I teach you the law, but briefly, murder is the unlawful killing of a human being. There are various ways in which the Commonwealth can prove a murder case, and the Commonwealth is permitted to proceed under all theories it believes it can prove. Here, the Commonwealth alleges that the defendant committed murder and that the murder was murder in the second degree. In order to prove the defendant guilty of second-degree murder, the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed an unlawful killing and that it was done with malice. In comparison, involuntary manslaughter is an unintentional, unlawful killing caused by wanton or reckless conduct. These terms and the elements of the crimes will be explained to you in greater detail at the end of the case before you begin your deliberations. Now, at the outset, I would like to address the issue of public interest in this case and the duty of this court to adhere to the rule of law. John Adams said that we are a government of laws, not of men, and that the law must be deaf to the clamoring of the public. He meant that while the public opinion about a given subject may ebb and flow, the law must be steady, reliable, and even-handed. We know that on the subject of this case, there are people advocating for one outcome or another with intensity, but without the benefit of having heard or seen any evidence at all. The law works in a different way, and the difference is crucial to our system of justice. The jurors selected for this trial will hear and judge the evidence. They will decide what the facts are, and where the evidence is contested, they will determine where the truth lies. Ultimately, the jury will decide whether the Commonwealth has carried its burden of proving that the defendant is guilty of any crime beyond a reasonable doubt. People outside of this building have rights, and we know that they have voices, but this criminal trial will be decided by an independent jury, free from outside interference, based only upon the evidence presented in this courtroom and the law. This is the only way to ensure that every person who comes before the court receives a fair trial. It is just that simple and that important. So, while public comment will likely continue, the rule of law will be upheld. In order to determine your eligibility to serve on this case, I'm going to ask you questions all as a group, and then I'm going to ask you to fill out a supplemental questionnaire. We have found that the use of this questionnaire is helpful for several reasons. First, there are some personal questions on it, and we ask that you be candid. In addition, the process of filling out the questionnaire provides the opportunity to be more reflective as you answer the questions, rather than being put on the spot and asked to give immediate answers. After you fill out the questionnaire, we will have you come up to the sidebar one at a time so that we can follow up with you on your answers to the questionnaire and to my questions. I want to thank you in advance for your patience as we go through this process. As you may know, the lawyers for the parties participate in the selection of the jury. Under our law, each of the parties has the right to exercise what we call juror challenges. This means that each party has the right to challenge a certain number of prospective jurors for any reason or for no reason at all. Therefore, some of you may be excused during the impanelment procedure. If you are not selected for jury service on this case, you should not take it personally. Don't think that somehow you're not a fair person, because it's not a reflection on you at all. You will be directed back to the jury room and perhaps be picked for another case. In a few minutes, I'll pose a number of questions to you as a group. You have just taken an oath that requires you to truthfully answer these questions and all questions posed to you. If your answer to any question is yes, I will ask that you raise your hand and hold up your juror card in the air with the numbers facing out so that the court officer can read the number from the card. You don't have to get your cards out yet. I'll tell you when it's time to get your cards out. Now, the fact that you answer yes to one of my questions does not mean that you're automatically disqualified from jury service. It simply means that there are matters that counsel and I must discuss with you. If you find a question posed to the group overly intrusive, you may elect to answer the question at sidebar. I may have additional questions for you which relate to issues that may be raised in the trial and are designed to give us information regarding your ability to serve as a fair and impartial juror in this case. And the lawyers are permitted to ask you questions for the same reason. This is not a test. There is no right or wrong answer to any question. We're simply looking for your honest and best answers to the questions. Now I'm going to have the lawyers introduce themselves. We'll start with the Commonwealth, and when the defense introduces themselves, please introduce your client. Mr. Brennan,
Your Honor.
please.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hank Brennan. I represent the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Along with me are two other attorneys I'd like to introduce you to. All the way to my right is attorney Laura McLaughlin. And next to me is attorney Adam Ballard.
Thank you. Defense counsel, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Jackson. I have the privilege of representing Ms. Karen Reed, who is to my right.
Good morning, members of the jury. My name is Elizabeth Little, and I also have the privilege of representing you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Robert Alessi, and I also have the privilege of representing Ms. Reed.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Yannetti. I'm an attorney. I have an office in Boston. I also have an office in Dedham. It is my privilege to represent Karen Reed.
Good morning, members of the jury. My name is Victoria George, and I have the pleasure of representing Ms. Reed.
Good morning, I'm Karen Reed. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you very much. Folks, I'm going to read a very lengthy witness list to you. It's important that you listen to the names because at some point I'm going to ask you whether you know any of these folks. So when you hear it, please listen to it in those terms. Now, it does not mean that all 150 witnesses are going to be called at trial, but you'll hear their names if they're not called. You may hear their names during trial. So it's important that we know if you know these folks. The list is alphabetical, but it's alphabetical by first name. So Aidan Kearney from Jefferson, Mass. Dr. Aziz Wolf from South Miami, Florida. Alfredo Lopelato from Canton. Allison McCabe, also Canton. Andre Porto from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Andrew Klain from Bridgewater. Andrew Rentschler PhD from Pittsburgh. Angela Malvone from Canton. Annie Chung from Canton. Anthony Flamati from the Canton Fire Department. Ashley Bell from Canton. Ashley Valliere from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Brian Albert from Norwood. Brian Albert Jr. from Boston. Brian Higgins from Sandwich. Brian Loughran from Canton. Brian Wanless, retired Canton Police Department. Bridget Meehan, keeper of the records in Canton. Caitlin Albert from Easton. Charles Ray, a lieutenant with the Canton Police Department. Chief of Police of Canton, Helena Rafferty. Chris Van E., PhD from Novi, Michigan. Christina Hanley from the Massachusetts State Police. Christopher Albert, Canton. Christopher Curran, Canton. Colleen Crawford from the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office in Canton. Colin Albert from Canton. Courtney Proctor from Canton. Kurt Roberts from Canton. Daniel Whitley from the Canton Fire Department. Daniel Wolf, PhD from Penns Park, Pennsylvania. Derek Ellington from Wake Forest, North Carolina. Dr. Marie Russell from Los Angeles. Dr. Elizabeth Loposada from Providence. Elizabeth Proctor from Canton. Eric Hanlon, Canton. Erin Beatty, Canton. Erin O'Keefe, West Bridgewater. Francis Walsh from the Canton Fire Department. Garen Wing from Green Cove Springs, Florida. Gary Fowler from Brockton. Gregory Woodbury from the Canton Fire Department. Gretchen Voss, Boston, Mass. Hannah Knowles from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Heather Maxon from Walpole. Arabito Hernandez from the Boston Police Department. Holly Price from Mountain View, California. Ian Whiffen from Vienna, Virginia. Dr. Irene Scortibello from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner in Massachusetts. James Crosby, Master's, PhD, from Jacksonville, Florida. Jason Becker from the Canton Fire Department. Jean DeMulis from Canton. Jennifer McCabe, also Canton. Jessica Hyde from Bridgeport, New York. John O'Keefe Sr. from Braintree. Judson Welcher, PhD, from a company called Aperture, LLC. Julie Albert from Canton. Julie Nagel from Canton. Dr. Justin Rice from South Weymouth. There's a juvenile whose initials are KF from Canton, and there's another juvenile whose initials are PF, also from Canton. Caitlin Boudreau from Raynham. Karina Kolakithis from Canton. Katie Camerano, also Canton. Katie McLaughlin from the Canton Fire Department. Keeper of the records for Ring from Hawthorne, California. Kerry Curran from Canton. Kerry Roberts, Canton. Kevin Albert, Canton. Kevin O'Hara from the Massachusetts State Police. Lance Mello from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Laura Sullivan from Pembroke. Laurie Cahill from Worcester. Leslie Pearlstein from Canton. Lieutenant Michael Lank from the Canton Police Department. Louis Jutras from Canton. Lieutenant Brian Tully from the Mass State Police. Lieutenant John Fanning from the Mass State Police. Lieutenant Paul Gallagher from the Canton Police. Maggie Gaffney from Bonita Springs, Florida. Mark Lopolato, from Canton. Margaret O'Keefe from Canton. Marietta Sullivan from Pembroke. Mary Souza, Dighton. Matthew Amory from Canton. Matthew DeSogra from Charlotte, North Carolina. Matthew Erickson from Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. Matthew Kelly, Canton Fire Department. Matthew Kelsch, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Matthew McCabe from Canton. Maureen Harnett from the Mass State Police Crime Lab. Megan Mariani from New York, New York. Michael Camerano from Canton. Michael Easter from Los Angeles, California. Michael Trotta, Canton Public Works Department. Michael Wagner from Foxborough. Mike Maroli from Bridgewater. Mike Rushworth from Thompson Station, Tennessee. Natalie Wyweek Berschneider from San Marino, California. Nathan Reed from Raynham. Nicholas Bradford from Lorton, Virginia. Nicholas Curran from West Roxbury. Nicholas Kolakithis from Canton. Nicole Albert from Norwood. Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey, Officer Kelly Deaver from the Boston Police Department, Officer Nicholas Barrows from the Dayton Police Department, Patrick Haggerty from Somerset, Paul Mikowski from Melrose, Paul O'Keefe from Canton, Rebecca Bison from Canton, Rebecca Treyers from Norfolk, Mass, Dr. Renee Stonebridge from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner's Office in Boston, Richard Green from St. Beach, Florida, Richard Donatino from Canton, Robert Gilman from Hull, Ryan Nagel from Canton, Sarah Levinson from Canton, Sergeant Brian Gallerini from the Needham Police Department, Sergeant Sean Good from the Canton Police Department, Sergeant Paul Giampietro from the Canton Police Department, Sergeant Yuri Buchanan from Massachusetts State Police, Shannon Burgess from South Lake, Texas, Cheryl Waugh from Canton, Sophie Herzan from the Mass State Police Crime Lab, Stephanie Devlin from the Mass State Police Crime Lab, Stephen Mullaney from the Canton Police Department, Steve Nelson from the Norfolk DA's office, Steve Bernstein, who is a keeper of the records in Stoughton, Stephen Ridge from the Boston Police Department, Stephen Seraph from the Canton Police Department, Stephen Scanlon from West Roxbury, Terry Kuhn from Davis, California, Tess Chart from Lorton, Virginia, Thomas Beatty, Canton, Thomas Kelleher, Canton, Thomas Martin, Weymouth, Timothy Nuttall from the Canton Fire Department, Tristan Morris from Easton, Trooper Connor Key for the Mass State Police, also from the Mass State Police, Trooper David DeChico, Trooper Evan Brent, Trooper Jeffrey Kostowski, Trooper Joseph Paul, Trooper Kathleen Prince, Trooper Michael Proctor, Trooper Nicholas Garino, Trooper Zachary Clark, Wendell Robery from Canton, William Reed from North Dayton. That's the list of witnesses, folks. So in a while, I'm going to ask you all if you know any of those folks. So as you can imagine, this case is expected to take a while. The lawyers tell me that once we get a jury, which may also take a while, once we get a jury, that it's estimated that the evidence in this case should take 6 to 8 weeks. We do our best to let you know in advance what we anticipate the length of trial will be. When we start the trial, we will go full days so that we can expedite the trial. The dates that I'm giving you, the 6 to 8 weeks, is the far end of what we expect this to be, just for planning purposes. So the days will begin at 9 o'clock. We'll take a recess at about 11 for 15 or 20 minutes. We'll go until 1. Lunch will be brought into you. We'll start up sometime around 2 and go till 4 o'clock or 4:30 every day. And there'll be days off here and there throughout the schedule, and perhaps half days throughout the schedule. So that's the schedule that we intend to keep. Now, it might help you if I give you a preview right now about some basic law that applies to criminal cases like this. It's my job to teach the jury the law, and I don't do that completely until the end of the trial. So for now, I'll give you a very brief summary of some of the legal principles that govern the trial. First, and most basically, the defendant starts this trial presumed to be innocent. The fact that she was arrested or that she was indicted is not proof of anything. An indictment is just a piece of paper. It just makes an accusation. An indictment is merely a formal manner of accusing a person of a crime in order to bring her to trial in the superior court. But it is only the jury, in other words, you folks, who can decide whether the prosecution has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. If the Commonwealth does not do that, then the presumption of innocence requires you to find the defendant not guilty. The law does not require a defendant to prove her innocence, to produce any evidence whatsoever, or to do anything other than attend the trial. This presumption of innocence remains with the defendant until you, the jury, make your determination after listening and considering all the evidence. Another important principle of law is that the defendant has an absolute right not to testify, since the entire burden of proof in this case is on the Commonwealth to prove that she is guilty. Under our system of law, a defendant has a perfect right to say to the Commonwealth, "You accuse me, now you prove it, and prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. I do not have to say a word." A defendant's decision whether or not to testify has nothing to do with the question of whether she is guilty or not guilty. The jury must not consider it in any way or even discuss it in their deliberations. Jurors in a criminal case must determine whether the Commonwealth has proved its case against the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt based solely on the testimony of the witnesses and the exhibits. That brings me to the requirement of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. What is proof beyond a reasonable doubt? The term is often used and probably pretty well understood, though it is not easily defined. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean proof beyond all possible doubt. For everything in the lives of human beings is open to some possible or imaginary doubt. A charge is proved beyond a reasonable doubt if, after you have compared and considered all the evidence, you have in your minds an abiding conviction to a moral certainty that the charge is true. When we refer to moral certainty, we mean the highest degree of certainty possible in matters relating to human affairs based solely on the evidence that has been put before the jury in this case. I have told you that every person is presumed to be innocent unless and until he or she is proved guilty, and that the burden of proof is on the Commonwealth. If you evaluate all the evidence and you still have a reasonable doubt remaining, the defendant is entitled to the benefit of that doubt and must be acquitted. It is not enough for the Commonwealth to establish a probability, even a strong probability, that the defendant is more likely to be guilty than not guilty. That is not enough. Instead, the evidence must convince you of the defendant's guilt to a reasonable and moral certainty, a certainty that convinces your understanding and satisfies your reason and judgment as jurors who are sworn to act conscientiously on the evidence. This is what we mean by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. A juror's job is to find the facts. In determining the facts, you may draw reasonable inferences from the evidence that you believe because you're entitled to rely upon both direct and circumstantial evidence. I'll define those terms in greater detail later, but direct evidence essentially is evidence of what a witness claims to have seen or heard or touched or somehow perceived with his or her own senses. Circumstantial evidence exists where a witness does not testify directly to the fact that is sought to be proven, but you are provided with evidence of other facts and then asked to draw reasonable inferences from them about the fact that is sought to be proved. Jurors are entitled to consider both kinds of evidence. There is no difference at all in the probative value between direct and circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is competent to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I've used the word inference. An inference is a logical deduction or conclusion that you may, but are not required, to draw from evidence that you have accepted as believable. Inferences are little steps in reasoning, steps in which you take some known information, apply your experience in life to it, and then draw a conclusion. An inference drawn from circumstantial evidence need not be necessary or inescapable, but any inference which you do draw must be reasonable and possible. It must be logical. It must be a natural one which is not too remote in the ordinary course of events. You may not guess. You may not speculate or engage in surmise. When the evidence tends equally to give rise to either of two inconsistent propositions, the Commonwealth has established neither proposition. In order to convict the defendant, you must find that all of the evidence and the reasonable inferences that you have drawn, taken together, prove that she is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, our system of justice depends on judges like me and jurors like you being able and willing to make careful and fair decisions. All people deserve fair and equal treatment in our system of justice, regardless of their race, national origin, religion, age, ability, gender, sexual orientation, education, income level, or any other personal characteristic. You have agreed to be fair, and I'm sure that you want to be fair, but that is not always easy. One difficulty comes from our own built-in expectations and assumptions. They exist even if we are not aware of them, and even if we believe we do not have them. Some of you may have heard this called implicit bias, and that is what I'm talking about. We judges have the same problem, obviously, as everyone else, so let me share a few strategies that we have found useful. First, slow down. Do not rush to a decision. Hasty decisions are more likely to reflect stereotypes or hidden biases. Second, keep an open mind. Avoid drawing conclusions until the end of the case when you and your fellow jurors deliberate. Remember that when you deliberate, you will have all the evidence and all the time you need to make a careful decision. So there truly is no need to start making up your mind before then. Third, you should listen closely to all the witnesses. That is the best way to ensure that you decide this case based on the evidence and the law instead of on unsupported assumptions. Fourth, as you listen to the testimony about the people involved in this case, consider them as individuals rather than as members of a particular group. Finally, I might ask myself, would I view the evidence differently if the people were from different groups, such as different racial, ethnic, or gender identity groups? At the end of the case, I will remind you of these strategies and ask you to focus on the evidence instead of any unsupported assumptions you may have. All we ask is that you individually and as a group do your best to resolve this case based upon the evidence and law without sympathy, bias, or prejudice to the best of your ability as human beings. Now, I know that some of this may be confusing, and perhaps all of it's confusing at this early stage of the case. You'll certainly be in a better position to understand this at the end of the case when you've heard all the evidence and I can explain the law in detail. So don't be worried if you didn't catch everything I've said. Why am I telling you these things now? Because we need to know if you are able to follow the law in this case. You don't necessarily have to agree with the law, but all the jurors will have to apply the law as I describe it. So for jury selection, it's important to know if any of you might have doubts whether you can accept and follow these legal rules. So I'm going to ask you questions in a few minutes. So if your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. Before we begin, though, I understand that sometimes jurors do not fill out the juror questionnaires completely, that sometimes we are in a rush to send them in, or sometimes we don't think that our situation applies to the question that is asked. If the lawyers and I notice that the questionnaire appears to be incomplete, we may ask you to answer the question for us. Also, if you know now that you failed to include information on the questionnaire, for example, a work history, prior involvement with the court, whether as a party in a case, a witness, or a juror, please let us know. So while you're taking out your cards, I will see counsel and Chief Rosen, juror number 79 too, and counsel at sidebar, please.
So I was surprised to see that the alt juror is actually in court being introduced with them as part of the legal team. I don't know. I was surprised by that.
I'm not. I'm sure she's there to watch the jury.
Yeah. Basically, it seems to me like a deal was made. You make this statement to Katrina Rex that presents yourself as a juror that thinks this was a travesty of justice, and we'll put you on the team. That was the deal, right? I mean,
it seems pretty quid pro quo to me as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Matt's back too, and Jen is here too. Any surprises for you guys there, Matt, Jen?
No, not. Go ahead. Sorry, Matt.
Oh no, we got the Ring witness there. Anybody want to comment about that? The witness from Ring.
I mean, I think that's great because I think there was something that Proctor was trying to get out in the first trial that they were like, nope, hearsay. So I think, because I think we all know that it was deleted, but they were surprised by some of that Ring, by the Ring letter. Remember Buchanan was like, I didn't even know about this letter, and he's reading it live in court. All those surprises that she was given as a gift in that first trial are gone. So she's screwed. That's my 2 cents.
I think it looked bad. Any time you have a trial and you have just this litany of attorneys, to me, it's such a bad optic. That's just how I see it. It looks like they're so rich and entitled and getting this better chance. I would have rather have seen them change that and had maybe, 2 sit there. That's just an optic that I was going to comment on.
So who was the FBI agent that listed? Is that someone that works for Aperture now? They
I'd
listed
have
an
to go back.
FBI.
I'd have to go back and listen.
I
Yeah,
need
I
to go
think-
back and look. I also want to know the name. I missed it.
I think it said coach, but I'm not 100 something similar to that, but I'm not 100% sure.
So now I have questions that I'm going to ask you, and the court officers will read your number. So if you have that card, and hold it high, please. Do any of you folks or a close personal friend or family member know, or have you?
96, 32, 32, 959, 3, number 3.
Juror number 46. 46. Juror number 90.
All right, thank you. Do any of you folks or a close personal friend or family member know, or have you had any prior dealings with the lawyers in this case or with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office? I see no affirmative responses. Do any of you folks or a close personal friend or family member have any financial or other personal interest whatsoever in this case or its outcome? I see no affirmative responses.
Bullshit.
Has anyone seen, heard, or talked about this case? Please raise your hand.
Has anyone been planted on this jury by Kate Peter?
Right.
Juror number 54, 5-4. Juror number 4. Juror number 7. Juror number 95, 95. Juror number 12, 1-2. Juror number 35, 3-5. Juror number 2.
This is awful that they're all in there for everybody to see.
41.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think I think it should be private myself, but
24, 2, 4. Juror number 97.
is Turtle Boy in there? Or did they, I mean, I know he was saying he was going to be.
Juror number 99. Juror number 25. 55. Juror number 90. 90. Juror number 92. 92. Juror number 91. 91. Juror 106. Juror number 101. Juror number 68. Juror number 65. Juror number 105. Juror number 60. Juror number 115, 115. Juror number 76. Juror number 66.
Looking on Twitter, Aiden's not happy that he was listed first because alphabetically his last name begins with K.
Juror number 6. Juror number 96, 96. Juror 109. Juror 133.
He's never happy.
13. Juror 73, 73.
Manufactured outrage.
Juror 31, 31. Juror 32, 32.
Jen, you've been involved with a lot of testifying in cases. What do you think of the performance of Judge Cannoni?
88. Juror
I mean, it's very clear to me that she is a defense type of judge. When I say that, I can tell her background is from a defense lens. I can tell in her jury instructions. I can tell in her, really grave concern for the defendant. And I would rather have something lean that way than lean the other way, like we saw in the Delphi case. So I think she's really trying to be so fair. I have to always laugh that the, FKR people think that she is anything other than at least fair and tipping toward the defense side of things. It's really shocking to me. And I'm saying that from looking at that very neutrally. there were so many decisions that she's made that I have found, I think, surprising and certainly positive for the defense.
I mean, the thing about that is you could tell those free Karen Reed people that water isn't wet and they would believe it if Turtle Boy said it. So, you know, that's why they believe that. They believe anyone that says anything about Karen is corrupt and in on it and this and that. It's a cult. Like, these people aren't thinking.
You know, you talk to a lot of them and they'll say, hey, I don't get my information from Turtle Boy, and I still insist that Karen Reed
Okay,
is
thank
innocent.
you.
All right, so you get your info, but
Have
you're still
any of
getting
you
your
folks expressed or formed any opinion with respect to
No.
this case? If so, please raise your hand.
Let's see what this goes.
108, 108. Juror number 7. Juror number 95, 95. Juror number 107, 107. Juror number 2. Juror number 35, 35. Juror number 80. Juror number 97, 97.
Juror number 90, 90. Juror number 91. Juror 106. Juror 101. Juror 105. Juror 60. Juror 115, 115. Juror number 66. Juror number 85.
Juror 109. Juror 73, 73. Juror 86. Juror number 3. Juror 94. Juror 40. Juror 59. Juror 53.
Jesus.
Juror 84.
This is people who have formed an opinion.
Yeah.
Juror 82. Juror 77.
Absolutely, the only shocking thing is they're admitting to it.
Yeah. Man, you know, in most trials, there's a lot of jurors that want to get out of jury duty. So do you just wear pink to court if you want to get out of jury duty? The easiest way, right?
Or say you're an FBI agent.
Number 37 and juror number 22.
So what are the lists that they're looking at,
All right.
Jen?
Thank you.
What's the
Are
list of
any of
these
you
guys?
folks aware of any bias or prejudice that you may have in regard to this case, or in favor of or against either of the parties? If you believe that you might have a bias, please raise your hand.
Juror number 25. Juror number 8. Juror 90. Juror 91.
Kevin, they're looking at that list. They have all those lists of numbers that have each person, and they're making notes.
65. Juror number 60.
So the only information they have on that list at this point is just the names.
115.
Is that, or do they have more?
I think they just have the numbers.
Okay.
So there should be just the numbers.
Juror number 36. Juror number 37. Juror number 3.
All right. Thank you. Do any of you folks have any difficulty hearing or any problem with understanding the English language, any physical or mental condition, or any religious or philosophical beliefs that would interfere with your ability to hear the evidence in this case, to understand the evidence, to concentrate during the trial, or to deliberate for the purpose of reaching a verdict? If so, please raise your hand.
Juror number 95, 95. Juror number 8.
Juror 101, 101. Juror number 65.
95's raising their hand for everything.
105.
Juror number 13. Juror 31, 31. Juror 75.
All these people will likely be scrubbed.
90.
Juror number 30, 30.
Okay. Would any of you folks have any difficulty following the concepts that I've described? First, that the burden of proof rests entirely with the Commonwealth. Second, that that burden of proof is proof beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And third, that the defendant has absolutely no burden. She's presumed to be innocent. unless and until the jury determines that the Commonwealth has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Is there anyone who would have difficulty following those very important constitutional concepts?
Juror number 5858, juror number 8.
Okay. Now, I can tell you folks that after every jury trial, I talk to jurors, and they often tell me not only that their jury experience was an interesting one, but a rewarding one. I do understand, though, that for a few of you, however, service in this jury may be a substantial hardship, and let me explain what I mean by that. It's something more than mere inconvenience, because every civic duty we have causes us to be inconvenienced. It's far more extraordinary. It's something that would justify your being excused and a fellow juror having to serve in your place. I do understand, though, that it may be a substantial hardship. So if anyone has a substantial hardship, and what I typically mean by this is you have airline tickets or surgery scheduled during the course of this trial. But bearing in mind that this case may take 6 to 8 weeks to try according to the schedule that I've described, and keep in mind that I'll only excuse those who have a substantial hardship. If you think you are in that group, please raise your hand.
Juror number 97, 97. Juror number 47, 47. Juror 108, 108. Juror number 8. Juror number 50. Juror number 7. Juror number 23, 23. Juror number 24, 24.
Juror number 90. Juror number 91.
One of the questions should be, how many pink shirts do you own?
Well, sadly, I own several now.
Oh.
That I can't use them anymore.
I know. I have them too, and I like them, but like I definitely don't go online with them.
I never
got
wore
them
pink anyway.
I only got them when I started YouTubing, because I had a particular camera that was having a problem with focusing in and out, and it said if you get pink or pastel colors like that. So I got a couple of shirts like that just for that reason. And now I can't wear them.
I wanted to call your attention to Alessi. Looking back, really making eye contact, but on particular questions, the one he focused in on was the two that raised their hand that said they might have trouble with understanding concepts. The defense
So
wants
in a few
jurors
minutes, I'm
that
going to
have
leave
trouble
the
with
bench
that.
to give you a chance to fill out the supplemental questionnaires that we have. I ask that you not talk to anyone around you or share with any other prospective juror or anyone any questions or comments or concerns that you may have about jury duty, either generally or in this particular case. If you should have any questions or concerns, you can raise that when you come back to talk to me. So we appreciate your patience. We understand that this will take a while, but I will recess now for you to do that. All right, thank you.
So Kevin, going back to what you were saying about, talking to people that are like, oh, I don't follow Turtle Boy, but then they come up with this stuff that's total misinformation. I've been seeing it, like I've been going live on TikTok lately, and it's like exposure to like this whole new audience, and it's mostly free Karen Read people. But it's like interesting. So like I brought this guy up on the live, and he's like, I'm not a free Karen Read person, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm like, okay. So started discussing like the evidence, and he's like, but they found the red pieces on top of the snow. I'm like, oh my God, like there's nobody else that has ever said that besides Turtle Boy. And it's like, It's that kind of thing. It's like that sticks in people's minds, and then they don't get any new information. They don't correct their information, and they just run with it. And that's their mind's made up because the pieces were found on top of the snow, which isn't even true. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I'm frustrated that the public doesn't have at least a common sense, street smart sense that it's really the job in many ways, not to do it in a public campaign the way they do it here, but it's the job of a defense to create reasonable doubt by trying to twist into everything into something that looks a little bit odd. And they don't wait to see if there's another explanation. And I remember when they first put that out, showing that first piece of taillight that was found at 5:45. Look at that. It's just sitting on top of the snow. And there's no sense of skepticism. Like you're saying, all right, so they kind of pictured Andy Dufresne and Shawshank Redemption. So Michael Proctor arrived and just slipped it through his pants onto the snow. And then a few seconds later, wow, look what I found. But you could see in that picture the shovel marks right on top of the snow. And it's just they don't have any sense of that. It's disturbing.
Yeah, because Turtle Boy will say one thing, and they're all saying it's undisturbed snow. And I'm just like, and that was like before there was any clarification on it. I'm like, obviously that was just dug up. You see the shovel marks. But like they are just repeating and repeating, and it's bizarre. And it's the same thing like that picture of the back of her car. That was like a bombshell in the first trial where we had that dash cam of the back of her car at 8 a.m. No red pieces. And they're all like, they look exactly the same. I'm like, are you insane? The tow truck driver said that her taillight wasn't damaged. So like, you don't believe your own eyes? Like, it's so, I mean, it's like evil. It's like, I don't even know what, it's like stupidity, but it's like evil.
It reminds me a lot of like Flat Earth, right? And like, I used to debate those guys back in the day, and it's like you can't really argue the facts side because it goes on deaf ears. And so the second thing that you're kind of looking at is like, okay, so you think there's this massive conspiracy. How many people would have to be involved to pull this off? But I mean, they're being conditioned to reject all outside influence. And again, it goes back to like, as soon as you start speaking out against it, you're going to be labeled a bad person. And, Matt got a DUI. I'm a terrible mom. Kevin fakes cancer. Jennifer Coffin Daffer is an idiot, right? So they're primed not to believe. And so it's not just us. Every time that somebody else comes forward and starts going, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Way too big of a conspiracy. Way too many people would have to be involved. It doesn't match the evidence. They get othered too. And it's just this horrible, like, echo chamber death loop, I think these people are beyond help at this point. They're going to believe that this woman is pure as the driven snow, no matter what happens in this trial. That's just the way that it is.
That's sick.
Yeah.
And it's not always an issue of stupidity. Sometimes it is. But I do know some very reasonably bright people. I mean, I've heard of doctors that believe in this. So there's another phenomenon at work here where you have people that just maybe that they have a worldview that they're just plugging this into an ideology or something like that. If they incline to believe that everything is rigged and everything is fixed or all police are corrupt, and they just plug this into it and stop looking at they just never really examine the evidence and whether it makes sense. So like for me, when I started out looking at this case, and Kate will vouch for this, because I didn't know her. But when she first reached out to me, so I started covering this when Turtle Boy, based on his articles, and that's all I had. I didn't have documents, and so I went through that summer just trying to ask logical questions based on reading his documents. And I know you did the same thing, I think, Matt. And when I didn't sit there and say that the police couldn't be corrupt, that evidence couldn't be manufactured, because we know that that's happened. What I want to know was, what was the opportunity here? Did they have access to the vehicle? So when Kate first reached out to me, I said I wanted documents and I wanted to know where that Lexus was all day. And I think she may remember that conversation. Yep. That's what I wanted,
Yeah, and I think it's both sides too. Like, because if you think about it, there's probably a lot of people that just automatically thought she was guilty because they always believe the police. There probably is a lot of people on the anti-free Karen Reed side. But like, to me, I came in as thinking everything's corrupt. Like, that's kind of like my basis is like, yes, everybody lies. There's corruption everywhere. And like, that's what I thought this case was going to be about. And that's why I started following it. But I think it's people, there's not a lot of people that can like challenge their cognitive, like their bias, right? And like read the documents through a different lens. And like, that's what I do. Even to this day, like when I hear people like saying stuff about Colin Albert, I'm like, okay, let's think about it. Could it really be? Could it really be? And it's like, what are the facts that have to be in place for Colin Albert to have killed him and everyone's covering it up? And you can't even get far, and like these people aren't doing that. And I feel like that's what critical thinking is about. That's what true crime should be about. But it's like people are now picking a side, and I think Massachusetts is ripe for it because we're a very like team sport oriented place. And I think that's what she feeds into.
Kate, did you want to say something?
I wanted to mention that there's been some discussion offline as to whether the juror names were available, and according to the motion and the order, the defendant does get the names, the attorneys. So
To
they're not
answer-
just looking at numbers, they're looking at numbers and associated names. So you know if Karen Reed has it, Turtle Boy has it, and FKR has it. So it's completely exposed.
That's unbelievable, actually.
I just want to answer ballroom gunfights question. Yes, we'll be covering this every day during the trial. Certainly not every day during this lengthy jury impanelment process, but we'll be covering everything that happens in every day. Some version of this, of all of us here, this team will be covering it, and you can find it on all of our channels. So Breaking the Case with Jen Coffenaffer, Boundless Millennial, Massimo Mafia, and my channel, Yellow Cottage Tales. It'll be on one of those. No matter what, one of us will have it on, and we'll all be in here, or as many of us as possible be in here together during the trial covering it, and probably drunken turkeys too. So yeah, you'll be able to get it. And I also, this is a good time for me to announce I'm flipping, and I am joining Free Karen Reed. April Fools. I had to get one in.
April 1st. That's funny. You know, though, Kevin, did you have an opportunity to introduce each of us, and maybe you did and I missed it at the very beginning?
I introduced your channels. So Jen is Jen Coffenaffer, former retired FBI, and her channel is Breaking the Case with Jen Coffenaffer, and you'll find her most mornings on the Julie Grant Show on Court TV. And but she doesn't just cover Karen Reed; she's covering numerous other cases, bringing her extensive FBI experience to that. And Matt's channel is Boundless Millennial on TikTok. Is it still on TikTok, Matt, too?
Yes.
So TikTok and YouTube. And me and Matt were kind of unaware of each other as we were flipping around the same time on this case, because I wasn't doing TikTok and I don't think he was following YouTube. So it probably, I know for me, it felt kind of lonely out there, you know. It's like, man, I feel like I'm the only one that's flipped here, you know.
I chased you all down as soon as I saw anyone who would have like cracks
Yeah.
of doubt in their coverage. I'd be like, "Hi, I'm Kate, and I have all the court documents."
Yeah.
And it was
I
always
still have
concerning to me.
Kate saved as Kate with court documents.
Well, that's the thing, is like, it's difficult. It's not impossible to get court documents in Massachusetts, but the process isn't as streamlined as like Florida, for instance. Florida is like the best, or Ohio. So like it was always very like disturbing to me that the full breadth of the case was intentionally hid from people. So you have especially creators that are like drawing these conclusions and putting out this information while being intentionally blinded to like more than half of the actual case, right?
Yep, I agree. I think the documents were a big thing, and that's probably why I believed Turtle Boy in the beginning. Because like the Idaho 4 case I was following, and I could see every single one. You just click on it, pull it down. But this case, it was like Turtle Boy was the source of the information in the beginning, until like I started seeing documents on Twitter, and I was off Twitter. I'd gone on Twitter during this case just because I realized that's where I could get a lot of the documents quickly.
Right. Yeah, the debate moved there because for a while there was only the Facebook group, the Free Karen Reed Facebook group, and then they had the attempted coup by Turtle Boy, and when that didn't work, he and the Roccos started their own Facebook group. And I don't think there were any real, or at least I don't know, I wasn't aware of any big Facebook groups from the other side. And so
I had a Facebook page. And so because my Facebook page was attached to my channel, it wasn't huge, but it was, you know, pretty substantial. And then once the Free Karen Reed, because at first, like when I talk about lonely, like I was the only person. like hands down.
Yeah.
And like not only the only person, but because I had this history with Turtle Boy, like just constant attacks too. And it's like you just kind of withstand it, like, nope, got to get the truth out there. So they discovered that I was anti-free Karen Read. Now I have an entire wave of people that's just mass reporting my Facebook page, right? Like, and one day I woke up and it was just gone. And I was like, oh, they got me, right? Like, what are you going to do?
And Jen Coffeneffer and Wendy Murphy were very early on in this case too, very, very early.
Yes.
That this was an absurd conspiracy theory. I don't know if Jen had a channel at that point. I used to, I saw her on like Court TV or something, a couple of other channels like that. And Kate, you were only doing like one show a month.
Yeah,
right?
I wasn't really doing. I got sick of live streaming actually before Karen Read, just burned out from it. I remember actually Jen Coffendaffer is the reason that I paid for Twitter to get the stupid check mark, because I started going on Twitter because I saw the discourse moving over there. And then one day, like I became alerted to Jen, and I was like, they were like, oh, this looks very promising. And I was like, oh my God, I have to speak to this woman. I have to let her know, who I'm talking to and what I know and these documents and everything. But you can't message a verified Twitter account if you're not verified too. So the entire reason that I have a blue check mark actually is Jennifer Coffendaffer.
Wow. Well, I'm glad, because then we were able to hook up. And, actually, Kevin, when I was asking you to introduce, not so much me as much as I think Kate and her level of bringing information about this case, Matt, you've written a book. I just think that there's a lot of different perspectives here. It's most interesting to me, Kevin and Matt sort of came from not really having an opinion, or having an opinion that's more anti-police and thinking there could have been corruption, to looking at just the facts. And that's what everybody should do, is not believe any of the four of us, but know we come from very different backgrounds. But the one thing that ties us together is we are looking at facts and facts alone.
Right. And I'm definitely not anti-police. I'm just, to me, I start anything from the idea that pretty much all things are possible, right? So most cops are just trying to do their job. And if they're going to rig evidence, they have to have a pretty profound reason to want to risk their career to do that and risk their freedom to do that. So I just try to look at, that's why I wanted to know the timeline. Was it even possible to plant evidence? Because if once you learn that it was not really reasonably possible to plant those first taillight pieces, then you're like, you don't really have to delve into the potential motive of Michael Proctor when you know that he had no opportunity to do it, So it's, I don't know. That's just logic.
You bring up another good point with the idea of a conspiracy, is that like generally if you can't come up with a clear, like articulable motive for said conspiracy, just not one here. The best they can come up with is like, oh, they didn't want to get in trouble for an assault. Like, so you're going to turn it into a murder? That's the solution? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? There's no clear motive. And the more people that they sweep into that, I mean, up to the judge. What is the judge's motive in engaging in this supposed conspiracy? Like, where's the motive there?
Right. And I've been seeing like the motive pop up again on TikTok. Like new people are starting to be like, I am from Canton, and I know that Colin Albert is a dealer, and this, that old conspiracy from 2 years ago that was debunked. And I'm just like, where are these people getting this stuff from? Are they watching like old Turtle Boy?
No, I'll tell you, that's unfortunate, the drug dealer thing. So, and I only laughed because, so at one point, like the misinformation was getting really bad. I reached out to a guy who'd been talking to Chris Albert, and I'm like, watch this. I'm going to take the plot of Ozark, right? And I'm going to email Turtle Boy, and like, he's going to run it. Like, he's not going to even question it. He's going to run it. And then I'm going to go right on the heels of that and go, haha, that was me. And it happened exactly as I thought it would. I sent the email. He didn't even reply to the email before he's reading it up on his stream going, oh, look at this, right? What I didn't know was that Karen Read was already floating the drug dealing idea behind the scenes, right? So unfortunately, with that, it took up like sort of a life of its own very after, because Karen's like, yeah, we have video of Colin Albert selling drugs, and they don't. It's a completely different kid. But I guess I should have done. I mean, I don't know how I would have known that, but the drug dealing thing, that's why they shy away from it so much. And I think that's why Karen even distanced herself from it with Greg Hill, is because in doing that, that opens up a huge amount of liability to them. It essentially pulls back the curtain and shows demonstratively, look, they don't vet their information. I just showed you that. But that's where it came from.
And that video that Karen took is real, and it's in discovery. And if it did involve Colin Albert, the defense could have used it.
It didn't. It didn't. The kid, I know the kid's name. Like at this point,
I do too. And he was 27-year-old man.
Right. Well, kid to me still.
Yeah. And so my point though is if Colin was in that video, the defense would have used it. That video is in discovery because John O'Keefe did send that to Kevin Albert, who's a detective on the police, and Kevin Albert was friends with John O'Keefe, so that's why they sent it to him. That's why it's in there. It was of no use to defense. But this is what Karen does, is just like with the Ring video thing, takes something that has a reality to it and then inserts Colin into it to try to create that possible third party culprit motive, but not just a motive for someone that could have been the third party culprit, but they're trying to create a motive for Michael Proctor, because there's no reason that Michael Proctor would want to plant evidence for Brian Albert. Or for Brian, certainly not for Brian Higgins, right? He doesn't know these people. But the idea that back in the day that maybe, because his sister is good friends with Chris Albert's wife and Chris Albert's wife's sister, and so that maybe there was a rally around the kid kind of motive there. That's what they were trying to go with. So it's pretty insidious.
Doesn't make any sense. No one's solution to to remedy one crime is to then jump to engaging in a worse one. Like, they could have just tuned the guy up and then called for help. If you're so connected that you can get away with murder, surely you're going to get away with an assault. I mean, if the guy's unconscious, well, he got out of hand and we had to restrain him, and we pushed him and he fell back. There's a million things you can do. That doesn't elevate it to a murder. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And again, when I look forward to the civil cases that they don't believe are coming, but they definitely are, right? Stuff like this leaves Karen liable, Turtle Boy liable. It's a lot of problems here.
Well,
and
at 6:30, the second trial for Karen Reed is about to get.
Every time I refresh, I have to turn the volume off. Sorry about that.
We can prove back to over a year ago that you can sell them the plot of Ozark. And no question whatsoever. You know who else? We did the Billy Tibbetts once. He ended up catching charges over it, the former NHL player and Situate. We would send him stories about the police because he was an anti-police guy, and somebody sent him the China Walk menu from Training Day. King Kong ain't got nothing on me, and he would just read them out as if they were fact, and he did it enough times, and he ended up catching charges for it, actually, for criminal harassment. So people like that you have to be wary of. And it's shocking to me that what remains is the Grant Smith Ellis is the world being like, Kate Peter accused Colin of being a drug dealer. First of all, they knew what I was doing ahead of time, and second of all, not the point. What should resonate with people is that Aiden Garney of Turtle Boy Sports is such a hack that he will read off an unverified completely unvetted email and not even double back and respond to it to check to do the sniff test before he runs with it as fact. That's what's important there.
So what do you guys think about, so there was nobody from Ring that testified last time. I know he brought it up before, but I'm still fascinated by this. Do you think that because we haven't seen any evidence, or Hank Brennan hasn't reported anything in court. Do you think maybe they know or have some idea from where that video or when it was deleted?
I think that it's going to be more like, we know there was an event, we know that there was a recording, we know that it's gone. I mean, maybe that would be good if they could at least say which device it came from and the time. I mean, that would be damning if they could get the time and it was when Karen and her dad were upstairs. I mean, the whole thing about that, when her and the dad are upstairs, she comes out with this little tiny bag. I thought she lived there, so she didn't have any of her belongings there. Was she already kicked out? It's really strange. It's like a shopping bag. That's all she brings out of the house.
Right.
I don't understand. It's was she already kicked out? because she told Higgins that her house was vacant. So, and she lived in Canton.
Well, that's a lie. We know that because, she was in Mansfield talking about going to Canton. I think that she probably didn't have a ton of stuff. And also, that's still working out the assumption that she even went there to get her stuff necessarily. I think it was number one, to get the car. Like, that was probably their main focus, which is why I think the brother and the sister-in-law, you can see in the ring videos, kind of linger around the car. Like, they just want to get the car and get the hell out of there, number one. And number two, I'm sure that she wanted to case out the scene and kind of, and her guilty conscience kicks in. And I mean, even her accounting of what the family supposedly did to be so awful to her is a lot of her just assuming that they're thinking things. She's like, oh, they gave me a weird look. If you just killed your boyfriend and you have to go stand in front of his family, I'm sure that every look they give you is going to feel weird, right? Because you know something that they don't know and you're worried that they're going to know it. But I don't necessarily think that I know for a fact that there was some stuff, without getting into too much detail, there was some stuff that she just abandoned there and never picked up again.
See, for me, the consciousness of guilt that would be important if you can establish that Karen deleted that ring video is that it seems to show her looking at the taillight before John was found. That's the key thing. So why does she delete the video of her when she first pulls into the driveway around 12:36? Well, probably for the same reason she deleted the video of her showing Kerry Roberts and Jen McCabe her taillight, because it shows her looking at the taillight. But if she's looking at that taillight at 12:36, then that's a powerful indicator of that she knew that. It doesn't mean that she knew she struck John, but it certainly is somewhat of an indicator of that. But it certainly indicates that she knew that she was in some kind of an accident, and yet she never called 911 at any point during this. So that's for my amateur lawyer way of looking at it.
I'm getting kind of tired of the whole I get it, and she was drunk, blah blah blah, but let's be real, okay? If you hit a curb or a pothole, you know it. Okay, so I don't know how you can miss striking a human, particularly with all the safety features that her car has, which I think Lally was trying to impress upon the jury during the view, right? And probably didn't do a necessarily great job. But I mean, how do you hit someone and not know it? I don't think you do.
I really want Hank Brennan to bring the brother up and have the brother testify about all the Lexus safety features. I just think that would be epic. About all the safety features that her car had that he sold her, because he sold her the murder weapon, I'm sure.
I just don't really think that. And you know what? If you listen, in between the lines to a lot of the statements she makes about, dropping him off in that night, she takes great pains to kind of try to build layers of plausible deniability for her realizing that she hit him, which I think is a pretty good indication that she probably realized it, because she's like, I was playing you too, and that wind was howling, and I wasn't blacked out drunk, but I just don't remember. Yeah, okay, Karen, sure thing. A lot of excuses as to why she can say, well, I didn't hear all that, beeping and dinging in my car, and I didn't realize he was out there. I didn't see him. It was windy, and no, I didn't hear him hit my car. It was howling. She knew. That's why she called him a million times. That again, it's not like she dropped him off, waited 4 hours, and then got nervous. It was literally drop him off, and as soon as you're on the road, you're calling. She knew. She was just hoping that he was going to get back up.
She absolutely knew. And I think the damning statement is in the first trial, Kerry Roberts saying he got hit by a plow. But then we have, if it comes in, Karen saying that was her first thought, that he got hit by a plow, because that's not a normal first thought. It's a normal first thought if you're trying to cover up what happened to your goddamn taillight, but that's not a normal thought that anybody would think. He didn't even have a jacket on, so he wouldn't be walking down the street. Someone would have gave him a ride if she really did drop him off there. So it's and she didn't even call anyone from the house yet. So why would he get hit by a plow?
My favorite statement is, he didn't look mortally wounded.
I mean, that's damning. And I think there's a lot more to that conversation too, because they didn't play that in the full, whatever it was, Dateline on 2020. That was only in the promo. So I feel like the attorneys must have been don't include that, but they included it in the promo.
No,
No,
it
I
was.
feel like I feel like the
you know,
promo probably went out, and they probably called immediately. You're like, yeah, I don't love that.
my memory of it is that they actually. I watched it live when that show aired, and I don't remember if it was 2020 or Dateline, but weirdly, after like 2 days later, because I went over on the channel, they had an online version of it up, but the online version was more edited. They had it, so,
is that
but
what
I,
it
but I,
is?
but I do remember that being in the live version, because not only that, the reporter was really grilling her on what she saw as John walked up to the house, and when the original the live version, the way that played, she looked so incredibly guilty, like she didn't want to. It was so clear that she was lying, like she didn't want to answer it, and he had to keep asking her. But then in the online version, they edited it out so it didn't look nearly as bad.
Yeah, she's like giggling when she's like, and then I slowly pulled away, and like she like is like shuddering and stuff. Like she's just so obviously lying. Like she doesn't know what to say, and she's kind of smirks when she's lying. Like she's just the most obvious liar.
Who was telling her to do all like that's what like I mean obviously like I was like going through and comparing all her statements to but at least a substantial snippet in a video, and like I just couldn't stop asking myself like who told her to do this. Like I mean it's just like she gets so much credit for being this like really smart successful woman. Like I mean I'm just a trash bag from a 3 family, okay, but like I know that like if you got an open case, like don't be talking about it in great detail like that multiple
I think that
times over.
they thought that they were trying to get it thrown out, right? They were trying to create this like public uproar, and like that's why Jackson came in, because he got like Kevin Spacey's charges dismissed. So that's what Karen thought. And so like, but I think after they did the first interview, they were like, that's bad. Let's retrain her, and let's have her do it again. And it doesn't matter how many times, because she's just an awful liar, and she's just so awkward, and it's just so obvious. She doesn't give a shit. Like that's the thing that came off the strongest to me in like this documentary. She really does not give a shit about the people that she's hurt, about his family, about John. She does not care. She loves this attention. And she's like, this is my mission in life now. Like she's just like the worst person.
So Chris, Chick from the Bricks sent me a message that maybe go to Christina Rex's. So thank you, Chick. And so Christina Rex has a little bit of a breakdown. Of the 91 jurors questioned, 78 had seen or heard or knew of the case. 40 had already formed an opinion. 16 said they had a bias or favor for one side or the other.
Jesus Christ.
So
Is
and she
anybody
also said,
surprised? I'm only surprised it's not more.
So, and to compare to the first trial, she said that's 86% of the jurors this time knew of the case, whereas last time it was 75%.
Okay, so that's about a 10% increase.
Yeah.
I just can't believe they haven't tried to do a venue change. I feel like that should have been, that wasn't even a motion, I don't think, right? Like, I feel like that should have been like a priority in this case, especially.
Totally agree. And I mean, it didn't have to be moved, but what should have happened was they should have gotten jurors from Boston and brought them in, just like they do in so many other trials.
So the problem is when we're talking about Boston, is that like first of all you're dealing with kind of a large area, roughly, like because people think, but also so that's Suffolk County predominantly. Probably not where you want to go. Honestly, probably not where you want to go. I mean, that's the problem. Is like where would you take it? It's pervaded the state. I think that perhaps if they had gone even Western Mass though. So I know that like Bristol County, it's definitely touched here. I don't know that it's necessarily like it is in Norfolk, but you're going to find some people that are aware of it. Suffolk, definitely. It seems to be really kind of concentrated in like the Norfolk, Essex, Suffolk areas. The only wild card with like Western Mass, once you go up there, is that's Turtle Boy's original region. So we don't know how many people he contaminated there, but it's tough because like, where do you go?
I feel like down the Cape or something would have been good.
No.
No?
They love her on the Cape for some reason. I got my own opinions, but I'm originally from the Cape. But yeah, I mean, they love her on the Cape.
I'm just saying, in Boston, there's millions and millions of people and millions of people that don't care about true crime, don't care about this case. They're busy with their lives.
6:30, the second trial for Karen.
Go ahead. Go on.
No, I'm just saying that that's why you have to choose from a huge jury pool when you have this issue, and then you need to sequester them. That's the only way to get a fair trial, and I just don't think this is going to work.
Yeah.
When you hear the noise like
Right.
that, I'm searching through channels to see if something comes back on. But every time I do, the volume comes on until I hit pause on the volume. So so sorry about the interruptions. It's just because I'm searching to see if something comes on. That's all.
Oh, by the way, everyone, did you know Turtle Boy is live tweeting?
Was that allowed?
It wasn't. I wonder if he's going to say, "Oh, I thought you meant at trial. This isn't. This is Verdire." So he's live tweeting about everything right now. Typical. He just can't. He can't help himself. He shouldn't be in there, but he's going to get it all anyway. But now he gets to see the faces, and he'll be able to know if it's the same John Smith that they give him on the list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's having his people try to like search for their social media. I'm sure that's what they do. Like that's what Free Karen Read does. They hunt through people's social media, through like people's histories. That's what they don't have jobs. Most of them, that's what they do. So like, I'm sure he's handing out names to people.
Yeah, I think it is what it is. I know we had a conversation with the other day, Kevin. I think it's probably prudent not to discuss that publicly right now, if you catch my drift. Because we don't want any adaptation to occur. But like, I don't know. I'd have to go back and read the order to see if live tweeting is even an issue. I know, like, hopefully he doesn't beat the sequestration. That's all. And I don't think he should be able to, because he could absolutely adapt his testimony based on what he hears from other people, and that could be problematic. And he's already essentially saying, like, I'm going to be hostile. So, like, I mean, there is a real possibility that he gets called here. And I mean, I think the way that it works is pretty much they call you up and then you assert the fifth. I don't think you can just say, "Oh, I'm going to assert the fifth, so you can't call me." I don't think that's how that works.
It's not how that works.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, there's two aspects of this. There's the people that might be intimidated by Turtle Boy and not want to be attacked in social media. And I'm talking about jurors. But the other aspect is you look at how multiple of these jurors have reached out to Turtle Boy seemingly right after the trial and have been in close contact with him. So these are people that they find appeal and wanting to be dragged into that and being a player, being a contributor to it, something like that. So there's two sides of this where he does damage. So I just wanted to, I put up on the screen the book that, if just take a moment to promote it, Storm of Suspicion. I probably had a similar path in this investigation to Matt, so I should have brought him in on this. But it is now available today. We've been getting, people that ordered the hardcover have been getting it over the last several days, but it's officially available today on Amazon. It's called Storm of Suspicion. I doubt I'll ever see a penny for it, and it wasn't for that reason. But for those that have bought it, another thing that would really, really help me a lot to push this up is, if you're inclined, if you have any kind of a positive reaction about the book, go on there and post a review on Amazon. That would be very helpful. Sorry, Matt, what were you saying?
I lost my train of thought. I was reading comments.
Yeah. All right. So is there anything else we want to go over? We probably don't have much to go on here today for this case, but this is a good introduction to people that are following this case. We'll definitely have every day of the trial, every minute of the trial, and anything else significant that's going on. We'll be covering it through all of our variety of channels here. Is there anything else you guys want to go into, or?
And I don't
Free
think
Karen
so.
Read.
I will fight you.
Thank you, Kevin, for all you've done to get this going.
All right, guys, thank you very much for being here. And so John DePetro was going to check in. But he's in the court, so he probably hasn't had a chance to. But he'll be in on some other occasion covering for us when he gets to come in. So, just to say thank you for the people that made the donations. So, Corey, thank you. She said she would think. Corey says he went back to the scene and saw Lucky, and that's why Karen was talking about the plowing.
I think so too. I think that Lucky saw her car, and that's why Karen was like, "That's that's the plow that did it."
Right.
You know, and then that's why they didn't come forward with that information forever. Through Turtle Boy, they did, because all this conspiracy stuff was flowing around. But like, if it was a true and real thing, they would have brought that to the police, right? And been like, you need to investigate. Like, we think this plow driver did it, or whatever. Or
Does
this plow driver
everybody
saw someone.
remember the Relentless campaign? I posted at least 3 of Turtle Boy's sessions. His relentless campaign against Lecky Lawford, calling him every name in the book, telling him he needs to come out, he needs to say what happened or what he didn't see, and it was absolutely intimidating. And then all of a sudden, there he came. You guys, Matt, I want to see a cool, funny video on that.
and it is a very real thing that people are terrified of that mob. It's not that they're terrified. It's a real thing. I mean, I've had countless lawyers, and people say they can't get their name out because whether them or someone in their family, because he'll go after anybody. If he wants to try to silence free speech. So if you disagree with him, he's going to go after you. He's going to go after your family. He's going to make stuff up, whatever it takes. Now, he knows we're not going to back down. So they've kind of given up on that to a certain degree. But most other people are like, and a lot of people, they don't want to deal with that, you know, so, and which I understand.
I get it. And look at the fact that, as they're saying, Proctor 24/7 has police coverage at his house. I consider the source, but they did have a video. But my point is, what are they putting Proctor through right now? I'm sure he's facing death threats, and I'm sure that's why he has coverage, if he does, at his house from the police. That's pretty frightening, really. And he's a civilian now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Kate, unless you want to have anything else you want to add, we can call it a morning.
I think we can call it a morning, and it'll be like this for the next several weeks, and then we'll get into testimony. So.
All right. Sounds good. Matt, when I end the show, if you could just stay on for a second, there was something I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, sure.
All right, guys, everybody, thank you very much for being here. This has been a great panel, and you'll see us all during the trial. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Kevin.